Call this meeting of the Northeast Independent School District to order. Let the record show that a quorum of board members is present, that this meeting has been duly called, and that notice of this meeting has been posted in accordance with Texas Open Meetings Act, Texas Government Code, Chapter 551. The time is 5:30. The board will now adjourn into executive session pursuant to the following sections of the Texas Open Meetings Act. Texas Government Code Section 551.074 to discuss personnel or to hear complaints against personnel. Section 551.076, discussion regarding security devices or security audits. And the time is 5:30. The board will now convene an open session, and the time is 6:18 p.m. On behalf of the trustees, I'd like to welcome you to this evening's meeting in Northeast ISD School Board. This is a business meeting of the board held in public. We appreciate your attendance and request your respectful attention. We welcome your comments during the Matters from the Floor section of the agenda. If you signed up to address a specific action item, you will be called at that time. And I'd like to remind everyone that it is the mission of Northeast to challenge and encourage each student to achieve and demonstrate academic excellence and technical skills and responsible citizenship. Item 5, Invocation and Pledge of Allegiance, Academy of Creative Education, Mr. Patrick Valdez, Principal.
Mr. President, board members, Dr. Micah, executive staff, and guests, thank you for inviting the Academy of Creative Education to lead the invocation and pledges at tonight's board meeting. Joining us today and representing ACE's student body are Milo Sandoval and Dionysia Hall. They were co-hostesses at last week's ACE spring commencement. Mila will be delivering the invocation and is accompanied this evening by her mother and stepfather, Mr. and Mrs. Ritchie, and her boyfriend, Zane Harrison. Mila's future plans include attending St. Philip's and studying psychology and education. Dionysia will be leading the pledges and is accompanied by her mother, Ivy Pacheco, sister Abrielle Ryan, and daughter Acacia Hall. Dionysia's future plans include attending St. Philip's and studying sonography.
Please stand and bow your head. One nation, under God, indivisible. Let us take these words to heart and learn to live by them, for they are more than just words. They are a belief that has shaped the course of our nation and the course of our lives. For we are one nation, united in our belief to improve the quality of life. Education makes it possible to be the best of which we are capable. And we are under God. And know that we will continue to grow as people with the common goal of becoming citizens that will nourish and support each other. We are indivisible, working together to become a force for peace and freedom. This evening, we ask God's blessing on this board meeting and everyone in attendance. Thank you. No, not yet. Okay.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible.
Mila and Dionisia, if y'all want to come forward, please, we're going to take a picture and get a certificate.
Thank you.
Thank you all, Kevin, for being here. You do not need to stay if you don't take it. You're welcome to leave. You can stay, though. That's fine. If y'all are going dinner, I'm coming with you. All right. Item 6, recognitions. A, UIL 6'8" state tennis bronze medalist, Madison High School.
President
Oh.
Byer,
Oh.
members of the board, Dr. Mike, executive staff and guests. Patrick Johnson, Director of Tennis, will address this agenda item.
Good evening. Tonight we're here to recognize Maya Bose from Madison High School. Last month she placed third in girls singles at the UIL state tennis tournament. And last week she was also recognized by the San Antonio Express News as the Athlete of the Year for girls tennis. She is here tonight with her coach Jenny Reeves and her parents. Congratulations, Maya, on an outstanding high school career. She does it by herself, though.
Congratulations on the bronze medal. That's incredible. We're very happy to see that coming back to our district. All right, item B, All Army Armed Drill National Champions, Reagan High School.
President Byer and all. Master Sergeant Johnson, Operations and Training Specialist for JROTC, will address this agenda item.
Good evening. It is with great pride that I come before you tonight to recognize the achievements of both the Rattler Guard drill team from Ronald Reagan High School and the Ryderette unarmed drill team from Theodore Roosevelt High School. Last February, 4 of our schools, high school JROTC programs, Churchill, Johnson, Reagan, and Roosevelt, advanced from the brigade round to compete in the All-Army National Championships held last month in Daytona Beach, Florida. Here, teams from across the country converge in what is considered the pinnacle drill event for Army JROTC programs. The competition is broken down into 2 divisions, an armed team using drill rifles and an unarmed team using no rifles. Teams compete in and can earn recognition in regulation drill, exhibition drill, color guard, and inspection. The scores of each of these events are then added and ranked to determine an overall winner. The competition is always tight, with a single miscue in any of the events can cause a team to rapidly fall out of contention. Cadets invest many hundreds of hours in practice throughout the year to compete at this level, so the expectations and pressure can be intense. So, I'm gonna speak like Colonel LaChance. How did they do? In a word, extraordinary. Northeast is home not to just one national drill champion, but two. The Reagan Rattler Guard captured the title in the armed division, and the Roosevelt Riderettes took it in the unarmed division. So you can give them a round of applause. So I am going to call the members of both teams. I'm going to start with Reagan High School armed drill team. All of the members are not here, but for the cadets that are here, I want to call them up. Julian Martinez. Luke Sokolowski. Paul Estrada. Mason Dunderdale. Trevor Michoud. Matthew Sokolowski. And Rhett Higgs. And they are here represented by their coach and instructor, Master Sergeant John Tiarina.
And before you announce, we can do a Roosevelt picture first, or a Reagan picture. Yeah. Congratulations, gentlemen. Enjoy your summer. Hard work. Take a little time off. So now we'll move on to item C, which is the All-Army Unarmed Drill National Champions for Roosevelt High School.
So first, Lisa Alvarado. Bola Alonge. Samantha Schmidt. Yuki Alvarado. Deshania Graham. Nadine Torres. Alexandria Valdez. Lena Aviles. Haley Weintraub. Estefania Lopez. Nevaya Stubbs. Kamora Scott. And Juan Centora. And they are represented by two of their instructors, Major Garner and Sergeant First Class Morales. Thank you.
Congratulations to Roosevelt. Y'all enjoy your summer as well. We look forward to seeing you back here next year. I'm sure we'll be doing the same thing.
Yep, probably.
Item 7, matters from the floor. The trustees welcome comments from members of the public during this time of the meeting. Generally, board members do not respond to public comments during the meeting, although members may request further information or a future agenda item on a matter raised during public comment. As explained fully in the board's written procedures for this time, the matters from the floor portion is a limited public forum. Accordingly, speakers may present on a topic related to district business for up to 3 minutes, but are not permitted to make 1, personal complaints about an individual staff or board member that should be raised using the district's grievance policies, 2, a personnel action, 3, a student disciplinary matter, 4, a complaint about a particular student, or 5, pending litigation. Any person who persists on speaking on these topics after being directed not to do so will lose the remainder of their time to speak and may lose their privilege of addressing the board at future meetings. Please remember that this is a business meeting of the board. Any person or group engaging in outbursts of any kind, causing a disruption to the meeting, will be warned, and if they persist, will be removed from the meeting. This is to ensure that all speakers have an opportunity to make comments without interruption, and that the board members are able to pay full attention to speakers without any distractions. We also welcome written comments at any time, either through email at board@neisd.net or by mail, care of the Superintendent's Office at 8961 Tesoro Drive, 6th floor, San Antonio, Texas, 78217. It's getting me all choked up just talking about it. Mrs. Thompson, the board secretary, will call your number, and then she will also be the timekeeper.
Number 1.
Good evening. My name is Teresa Hurd, and I've been serving our district as a paraprofessional for the past 19 years, and I'm the current Vice President of Education Support Professionals for Northeast Education Association. I want to take a moment to talk about something that's foundational to the health of our district, how we compensate our staff. Compensation is more than a paycheck. It's a reflection of how much we value the people who keep our schools running. It's about respect, recognition, and retention. When we talk about fair pay, we're talking about creating a culture that values time, talent, and commitment. In today's competitive environment, talent is everything. We rely on our staff's skills, creativity, and dedication to serve students and move our mission forward. But let's be honest, passion alone doesn't pay the bills. People work to support their families, plan for their future, and live with stability. If we want to attract and retain the best people, we must be willing to invest in them. That means offering competitive salaries, providing transparent and equitable pay structures, and creating meaningful benefits and incentives that make careers in education sustainable. Let's look at our bus drivers. They're asked to do more with less, often covering double routes due to staffing shortages and managing student behavior with limited support. Yet many are at $13 an hour. The only retention incentive is a small bonus for perfect attendance. That's not enough to make a job appealing, let alone sustainable. Our food service workers are in a similarly troubled position. They play a critical role in ensuring our students are fed and ready to learn, yet many of them earn less than employees at fast food chains, where starting wages are often $15 an hour or more. These are essential jobs, and the compensation should reflect that. Then there's our paraprofessionals, some of the most versatile and vital staff in our schools. They support students with special needs, assist in classrooms, serve as backbone of our school operations. We're facing a crisis. 37 paraprofessional positions remain open for the upcoming year. The starting salary is unacceptably low, and while new recognition programs like Paraprofessional of the Year are a positive step, they come with no financial incentive. Recognition without meaningful support won't move the needle on recruitment or retention. If we say we value these employees, we must prove it through fair pay, growth opportunities, and real investments in their well-being. It's not just about budget lines or averages, it's about equity and priorities. Yes, compensation is complex, budgets are tight, but fair pay isn't a burden, it's an investment. It pays off in better morale, stronger performance, and long-term stability for our schools. Let's make compensation a priority. Let's ask the tough questions, review the data honestly, and take decisive action. Because when we take care of our people, we take care of the work, and that's how we build a strong, more successful district for everyone. Thank you.
Thank you.
Number 2.
Good evening, President Byer, members of the board, Dr. Micah. I'm Patsy Esterline, Northeast AFT President, representing teachers and support personnel for Northeast AFT. Tonight, compensation will be discussed, and we would like to share our concerns. In HB 2, the legislature provided $3,000 for teachers with years 3 to 5 years of experience, and $5,000 for those with 5 or more years of experience. But teachers just starting out, or ones that have just 1 or 2 years of experience, are not provided for. It also eliminated all other professional employees from a direct pay raise, as well as paraprofessionals and auxiliary personnel. As we understand it, $45 per student is provided for all employees to use for pay, which is an inadequate amount for the increase in pay necessary in all of those job categories. Dr. Micah has indicated the administration's intent to address pay in all the job categories, and we urge the board to support that effort to the fullest extent possible. It needs to be no one left behind, even though the legislature did leave many behind. We look forward to hearing the administration's recommendations, but please keep in mind all the employee categories that were not addressed. Thank you.
Thank you.
Number 3.
I think it's me. I didn't get a number. I'm Paula Hilliard. Good evening, board members. Happy summer. Happy Pentecost. 2 quick ledge notes. Don't wait for TASB to draft policies because laws are going to be in effect soon. It's important to protect staff and NEISD parents. The governor is expected to sign Senate Bill 12 soon. It's a parental rights bill, and I urge you to direct the superintendent to send a signed bill, the law, to all employees and parents, and then to train staff on this to protect them. And I think, and I would even help if you asked me to. There's House Bill 210, an anti-public corruption bill that looks to be creating a state jail felony for vendors, including law firms and architecture firms, who give gifts to board members, either directly or through third parties such as a 501c3. Those gifts are now broadly defined, so take a look at that. Tonight, though, I want to stress the importance of rightly ordering relationships that are inside of our district. The parent-child relationship, and I'll have handouts for you because visuals work for me. The parent-child relationship is, of course, the foundation, and that comes first. So your policies, curriculum, and your decisions must reinforce and not weaken that bond. Next is the parent-teacher relationship. Your work must intentionally foster that relationship through policies, repeated emphasis, and being clear on your expectations. A healthy parent-teacher link is critical to everything, including behavior. Next is the educator-child relationship. That's self-explanatory. And on whose effectiveness, it depends on the soundness of the other two, how effective that's going to be. I just think having those in the right order up here is important. Sort of on a different track is your individual relationship with parents, taxpayers. As a board member, I urge you to engage with residents, especially those who are not allies, through informal, open-ended questions when you go out. Effective leadership requires a strong grasp of reality, not impressions filtered by public image efforts. Your relationship with campus-level staff is the next most important. Going to campuses for awards is fun, but going to campuses to observe and listen to the actual job we elect you to do, so make that possible. Your professional relationship with one another comes next. While personal connections are permissible, excessive familiarity risks compromising objectivity, which is essential for ethically representing constituents and for overseeing such an expensive, important institution. And finally, your relationship at the top with the superintendent. That is dependent on every other relationship that exists. If those falter, this relationship is irrelevant. Proper prioritization of these relationships is needed for effective leadership. It may be wise to have a set of questions you apply to all your decision making. I'll provide you a couple examples here just off the cuff this afternoon, but for example, will this strengthen or strain the parent-teacher relationship? You know, things like that. So I've jotted a few down for you. I wish I could elaborate more, but I hope you have a blessed week, and thank you for all that you do sacrificing, because board service is a sacrifice.
Thank you. Item 8, matters from executive session. A, personnel, including but not limited to administrative appointments pursuant to Government Code Section 551.074. 1, possible action regarding routine personnel, including but not limited to administrative appointments. Do I have a motion to approve items A, B, C, D, and E as presented in executive session?
So moved.
Thank you, Ms. Villarreal. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Ms. Chidgey. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Item passes 7-0. Item 9, presentations. A, budget presentation. Mr. Villarreal.
Yes, Mr. President, members of the board, Dr. Micah, executive staff, and guests. Tonight we bring you budget study session 2A, since we talked about bringing back some compensation numbers for you all for this board meeting. So I call on Susie Lackhorn, our Executive Director of Finance and Accounting, to present.
Thank you. Good evening. 2A, after spending a lot of time reading HB2, so we can talk in a little bit more detail about how that translates to our financials. We've done 2 budget study sessions, and tonight we're going to talk about compensation and school nutrition and debt service. Meet again next week for our view of the budget. Today we're really talking about projections and not budget. So next week we'll talk budget, and then next Thursday our formal adoption. All right, so tonight we'll do our recap and cover those topics that I just talked about. Recap from budget study session number 1, remembering that just because property values increase, it doesn't mean our revenue increases and vice versa. We have a cap on how much growth we can have, and the state requires us to compress our tax rate to offset that. And overall, that doesn't change our total revenue. Again, they use the funding formula to calculate that. And just a reminder that your neighbors, yourself, you may see an increase more than that 2.5% cap. Some homes will go up to the cap, some will decrease, some will stay the same. It is 2.5% across the district, not on individual homes. And so sometimes homeowners hear about that cap and they think, whoa, but my value grew by more than 2.5%, but that it's not individual, it's across the district. And we said it on budget study session number 1, and there's still some unanswered questions. Mainly now at this point it's about how the Texas Education Agency is going to interpret those laws. Budget study session number 2, we talked about health insurance, and we're recommending no increase to that. We have done a lot more analysis on HB2, and so we're here to make some recommendations, and we'll talk about compensation here. So let's jump right in. So here's our pay raise history, and as you can see, from 2014 to 2025, we've only had 1 year with absolutely nothing. Last year, I actually have a typo on this slide, I'm very sorry. Last year, it was a 1.5% retention. And then you can see we did targeted adjustments in 22-23 and 23-24, and even in 21-22. That's when we really started looking at individual groups instead of doing a flat across the board to everybody throughout the district with the same rate. Just a reminder, a 1% raise across the district cost about $4.2 million for the general fund. Now, as we talked about last time, HB2 has a very specific number for classroom teachers. And so it also provides an allotment requiring raises for other staff. So we have taken those numbers, and HR has looked at where different groups have fallen and compared to other districts, analyzed the difficulty in hiring these positions, retaining these staff, so we have some specific recommendations for some specific groups. And after I walk through some samples of that, then we'll combine the package and talk about how much it cost overall. So let's get started with bus drivers. Our recommendation would be to increase the starting pay 84 cents. And this slide shows you starting pay compared to other districts. We would move from slot 5 to slot 3. Caveat here would be other districts are going to do things too. We don't know at this time what those other districts are going to do, so we may not end up ultimately in that third slot. This is just us comparing to what they pay now. Incumbents don't get the same increase as what the starting pay increase is, so their increase would be $1.84 an hour.
Is that to make them whole?
Can you use your microphone, Ms. Shelton?
Is that to make them whole?
To make them whole.
So are they, let me rephrase, are they lower than 1680 now, the incumbents?
No, they could be anywhere on this scale. So that's based off of experience, how long they've been here. So they'll be in different spots. But we're recommending, and Shyla Witten may be here to help me answer if I need it.
Ms. Witten, is that to combat compression? Is that
Yes.
it? You don't have to fight all your way up here, but it's to battle compression. So what's happened over time when you start giving everybody is the pay scale gets compressed, and you
Right.
don't get any spread through the system. So by adjusting that throughout, it keeps the spread and quits everybody. So what happens is starting salary starts to creep up into all of your incumbents, and it starts to look like this. She's trying to spread it back out again.
Okay, perfect. Let me rephrase my question. So at the end, no one will be less than 1764, correct? Okay.
And our new hires will come in at that 1764. That's the real key there. Bus assistants, a 38 cents increase for starting pay. It really doesn't change our positioning, but it does move the needle. And our incumbents would see a 95-cent increase. So we're getting closer to the one ahead of us. For our instructional assistants, nearly read from the wrong slide there, moving from 1511 to 1571, a 60-cent increase to starting pay, and our incumbents would see $1.10. That was special ed instructional assistants. These are our pre-K and general education instructional assistants. 52 cents here on starting pay, or 93 cents for our incumbents. Custodians from 13 to 1365, $1.48 for our incumbents. And our police department, this would keep, not everybody has a police department, and so this would keep them in the same slot, but it would increase them, the starting pay from $1 to $1.54. one note here is that our police officers work more days than other school districts, and so their total pay can be higher compared to other districts as they are working a shorter schedule. So let's package this all together. As we talked last time, classroom teachers are required by HB2 to be given $2,500 if they have 3 or 4 years of experience, and $5,000 if they have 5 or more years of experience. I'm going to remind you again, the definition of classroom teachers is that they have to provide instruction in the classroom for average more than 4 hours a day. It's not 4 class periods, it's 4 hours. This is written into code, and so we will have some staff who are used to being on the teacher pay scale who do not meet that definition. And so I have grouped those staff members in campus administrators and other professionals so that they are included in the compensation plan, but they're not receiving the $2,500 or the $5,000. So librarians, nurses, and counselors, those campus administrators. Yes, ma'am.
Well, you're about to say 1% of midpoint.
I am.
Were you going to explain what midpoint is?
Sure.
Thanks.
Yeah. So, and again, my friend Miss Witten, in case I get this wrong, every position has a minimum, a starting. We just talked about some of those startings, and a midpoint. And so the midpoint is going to come back to that concept of compression. So when we provide a raise off of a midpoint instead of what someone is making, we're taking the scale and we're shifting it so that we don't compress. Because if you keep giving raises based off of pay, your scale ends up getting very lopsided. And so we shift the scale, move everybody based off of percentage of midpoint. And hopefully I didn't mess it up too badly. Okay, I got a thumbs up. And so some people will end up with slightly more than a 1% raise, and for those who have been around a long time, it may be slightly less than a 1% raise. But it'll keep the scale balanced and shifted together.
Or do we have more that fall into the latter category than the first? Do we have more that have been here for a long period of time and will receive less than 1%?
My instinct would answer one way, and I'm not positive that it's right, but my instinct based off of my file is I feel like we have more people below midpoint. But I cannot guarantee that without checking it. And the reality is it could be very different in different categories.
So I can say we can just use the teachers, for example, because when we looked at the one to 2, the 3 to 4, and then the 5+ years of experience, Shala, I'm not going to quote these numbers probably exactly, but I'm going to get close, okay? The 1 to 2 years, I think it was around 397, something around there. In the 3 to 4, it was approximately that many as well, if I recall correctly. I'm looking back at her to nod. And 2,947, I think, is the number of teachers with 5 or more years of experience.
And our average teacher is about 12 years of experience.
Okay, and so across all job categories.
So each
is the
category,
trend.
you're going to see differences and pieces to it, right? Quite frankly, I figured we had more from years of going to different things, that we had more teachers. I didn't realize it was actually that many that had 5 or more years throughout the district. So as you look into different job classifications, you're going to see different spreads. That's just the one I remember because it stuck out, which was the teachers.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so on the categories with an asterisk, those are, we showed you some samples of individual positions that would see additional increases. Then this totals up all the way. We're going to get funded for the classroom teachers. We'll receive another little over $2 million to provide raises for everybody else, just in the revenue model. And then throughout HB2, there's additional revenue being provided for a multitude of purposes that is discretionary for us to use. We talked about some of those allotments last time, the allotments for basic costs. They're increasing the basic allotment. There's a handful of things that are triggering additional revenue. And so this is a balance. We're spending more than what HB2 would require. But we are not using every bit of additional revenue. So some of that will drop to our bottom line and help with our budget deficit. So this is a balance. Just like our balance scorecard, this is a balance where we're weighing stewardship and staff. So we're using some of the additional funds to do more than what's required by HB2, but we're saving some of those additional funds to help with the deficit.
So can I just ask, so we won't be in a deficit to cover the pay raises for the teachers because you'll use some of the additional funds to go toward the deficit?
So the money that they're giving specifically for classroom teachers will flow right through and cover
There's
that
enough there
piece.
to provide.
That covers that piece, except for the benefits. So we
Right,
talked about
sure.
this before.
Yep.
So the TRS expense and the Medicare expense, they're not flowing that specifically to us. They're flowing that through the allotment for basic costs. So that cost is included in here. This is fully loaded. This is the raise plus the benefits. And then, so we'll use some of our additional revenue to cover the benefits associated with the raise. And then we're doing above what is mandated for everybody else too, in order to target those groups and provide raises for all the categories.
Okay, thank you.
Why does this feel like magical money theory?
I think that's my job title.
Yeah, exactly. I'm very concerned because where are we at our deficit right now?
That's in a couple of slides.
Okay, because I'm looking at this, and this is an increase, all right? That's a big number, okay?
I think, Ms. V, when you see the deficit and what it does, and I think, Ms. Lackhorn, we may want to go there, but again, it's the balancing act of making certain, because this bill and as its intent, you can see where they prioritize putting money, all right? So, however, as some of our speakers said this evening, there are people that were left out. And so what we were trying to do is strike a balance between doing something for folks and also offsetting our deficit. And I think we've struck a place that Susie and I and Dan feel comfortable with on doing something for folks, but not spending it all. Because quite frankly, I don't predict in 2 years you're going to get much of anything in the next session. And after what I heard over the weekend, I think the days of the basic allotment adjustments are probably gone for a while. And so we're going to need to be, as you all on a board have been, very good stewards of dealing with money. Last year it was tough not to do a pay raise, and you didn't. And then we saw what happened as we went along. So we found a balance that we feel like is manageable.
The revenue that we're receiving that is required to be spent on raises, roughly 19.6 million, 19.7. So we're going over that total, but not going so far over that we lose the benefit of HB2. There is still additional revenue in HB2 that will drop to our bottom line. So another thing that we have mapped that isn't spelled out on the chart is the possibility of a 1.5% retention for the staff members that do not receive the larger raises. So the retention supplement is one time, it's not ongoing, it doesn't commit us to that. And so that would be an additional 1.6 million. And it's an option to provide additional relief to the staff without committing the district to an ongoing cost. And I'll show you when we get to the general fund what that number looks like.
When you were talking about it, I think I missed, you said, so the money that, or correct me if I misunderstood you, but the money we got for all the categories outside of classroom teacher was around 19 million?
That includes classroom teacher? 'Cause
Oh, it does.
That cost
Okay.
is in here.
Okay.
And so of this 23.2 million, we should receive about 19.5, 19.6, somewhere around there in revenue that is required to be spent.
To be spent
on raises.
on raises. Okay, got it. Thank you.
Yeah, it's about 17 and change for the classroom teachers, which is pretty close to what you have here. And then it's 2 million and change for everybody else. All right, so this year you received some creative compensation recommendations from employee groups. One included, the first one was 0 increase to healthcare insurance costs, and as we talked last time, we're recommending no increase. The cost of kin, we currently provide a 20%, 25% discount for employees, and this just changed from 20 to 25% this past year. So we just increased that. Teachers covering classes when a substitute is not available, we're actually prohibited from assigning teacher duties during their planning period. So even if they agree to those duties, so if that happens, we need to be made aware of that, but we're not allowed by that Education Code 21.404 to do that. The only exception is if there's a surplus of planning time for those teachers. So if they happen to have 2 planning periods, that would be one of the possible reasons you could do it.
So can I ask a question on that? So this is one of the recommendations provided from NEIA, and so it sounds to me like this is happening. So how is it happening if we're not allowed to do that? And then what is the protocol if we don't have enough substitutes to cover a class?
I think I need some help on that.
I don't know if there's an absolute protocol. I think what campuses have to do is be as creative as possible because students have to be in front of a responsible adult. So sometimes what they do is they'll collapse a class where they may move more, and I'm thinking secondary, they may move more students to like the auditorium where the supervision may have a paraprofessional and a teacher in there. Sometimes they'll have where they have instructional coaches who are not teaching all day and they have to cover a class. So it just depends on the situation in the campus. So I can't really speak in absolutes, but those are just some things they could do.
No, go. The question, one of the questions I heard Ms. Landry ask, though, was what is the protocol if this is happening? How is it reported up? Because what I heard you say is we need to know if it's happening. I've heard from people that they're being pulled off of their break, but that's not the right word, off of their planning period to cover classes. So I've heard that this year. And I did not, my question was, really, right? But what's the protocol if that's happening and happening consistently so that we can stop that?
I don't believe there is a protocol to
Right.
stop it.
So I will tell you, as a teacher that began in 95, I was asked to do it even back then, all right? I think the difference today, and especially what we've seen coming out of COVID, is the frequency in which it's happening. And so what principals have done, because I've seen it to the point, they've collapsed classes, they've done other things, but in some circumstances in the past, I don't know if it's as prevalent today as it once was, but when 10 people don't show up one day, you're stuck, right? And that's, I think, where these things, I would say that, look, it's going to happen. I'm not going to, they probably won't say it. I will. It's not going to happen. Because as a principal, when you see 10 folks never show up in subs, and this is what's frustrating as an administrator, the subs are dropping off, and as the teacher, by the way, you have this sub another dropping off at 2 in the morning or midnight or in the morning, and now everybody is stuck, right? One of the things that principals do have at their discretion is if that's a PD, then call them back and come back to campus. You're just going to miss the professional development. That's not always met with great pieces. But I would say if the frequency is happening at such a point where it is becoming a burden, the first stop that I would do is, if it's the principal doing it, well, then obviously don't go to the principal. But in some cases at your secondary, it could be an academic dean or somebody like that. I would stop at the principal. But if the principal's been made away and there's not changing, then I would tell you to reach out to HR. That is where it needs to go. Because human resources needs to be aware of it, because that is who oversees that, and that's who Mr. Jimenez oversees.
Okay.
And at that point, that becomes, rather than a blanket statement across it, it's where specifically is it? Because that might be either a reteaching of us, re-looking at staffing. So for instance, during COVID, we paid out of ESSER dollars extra folks to work at our campuses and gave some folks actually extra because of trying to combat this issue. But what we've seen over time is some campuses seem to have a harder time fill rates than others.
That's correct. Dr. Mike, if I may, every morning HR sends out a list of unfilled substitutes, classes that do not have a substitute. And so there's already, usually the principals by that point already know because they see it themselves. But that also gives us an opportunity to, if we notice that something seems pretty large a number, sometimes Mr. Jarrett or I will send some of our folks from central office to try to help cover some of those classes as need be. Like Dr. Micah said, that happened more a few years ago, but once in a while we'll see things happen. If there's a spike in flu or whatnot, and we see some illnesses, sometimes we have to resort to those measures too.
Okay. Thank you for that. I'll probably make a recommendation at the end of the meeting, but I just want to, so just that I'm clear, this pay teachers to cover classes when substitute is not available. So if that happens and they, for whatever reason, flu, whatever, we're going to compensate these teachers that are now having to take an extra period. That's not what this is saying.
No, because by law you can't.
Okay.
That is what that is saying. By law you can't.
Okay.
I'm aware that districts are doing it. And I will tell you, it's not a problem until you're caught.
Well, but it's a problem.
No. What I'm saying is by paying them do it
to pay them
isn't a problem, Ms. Shelton, until you're caught.
Okay.
And then TEA can come in and do an audit. Susie, correct me if I'm wrong, and say, well, you paid out X dollars and now you will reimburse us for all of
Got
it.
it. Yep. Understood.
Because you could not use your dollars to do this, and so we're expecting for you to reimburse us.
So help me understand what this is saying, because it says pay teachers to cover classes when a substitute is not available.
That's the recommendation from me.
But then I heard somebody else say it was illegal.
Right.
So now
So this was a recommendation that
Yeah.
was brought, I believe, to you all and to me as something that, when these things were brought up, it was brought up prior to HB2 passing as ways to do compensation or something that would offset the financial pressure that employees are experiencing.
Okay.
So what we're doing tonight is covering these to make certain that, one, we heard them, and two, to provide an answer back to you all as to whether we can or we cannot do it. So if you look at the next one, increase classroom supply reimbursement, and the ask was also include instructional assistance. All right? This one, we can do it.
Okay.
And not only are we going to do this, we're actually going to increase that from $150 to $200 for reimbursement.
Understood.
And we're going to include instructional assistance
Got it.
in that reimbursement.
Okay.
But paying teachers to cover classes is something that's against the law that we can't do. Does that help?
That helps. Yes.
Okay. And then,
Can I go backwards to
Yeah.
my original question?
100%.
If we increase the employee discount, and I guess I wasn't sure if you were saying we were going to do these or not, so I apologize there.
We
But
just increased the employee discount.
what does
so-
that do to Ken's operating budget?
So right now, they're performing, I'm sorry.
because Mr. Jimenez and I have had lots of discussions about this.
Yeah. So because Ken is an enterprise fund, the monies that they get from tuition for the variety of different programs they had, really pays for everything in that department, including
Rudy,
salary.
explain an enterprise fund, and it's different.
Enterprise fund is, the district does not give the adult and community education department any district funds. Enterprise fund is you're collecting some type of tuition, and that's really what's paying for all of those programs. Salaries, electricity, water, you name it. So in essence, it's like running a small business. And there's a breaking point at some point when we give too much in terms of discounts, then we start hurting the system as a whole, and then we may not have kin after-school care for anybody because we're going under. So there's a balance. And so last year, Dr. Wells, who's the executive director for kin, and I had a conversation about increasing the discount that had been 20% for quite some time, and we increased it to 25%. Increasing it any more could cause us to have a little bit of a hardship when it comes to then meeting the bottom line that we do. And that's one thing that we want to make sure that, the biggest stressor that she has when I used to be there is making sure that we're paying our employees when they're supposed to get paid.
And that's just for employees. So that's not for, if I send my kid to kin, I don't get the discount because I'm not an employee. So it's whatever that
Understood.
percentage is of.
What does it do to their operating budget, though? A 5% reduction in the fee that they're going to get, that's it could be significant.
It could be significant, yes, ma'am.
Right? I guess, because I'm assuming they're also not going to get the raise that we talked about on the other slides because kin is self-funded, correct?
They still will get, they usually follow us with the scales, which also comes out of the same budget that I'm talking about, that enterprise fund.
Right.
So we also have to pay for those increases in anytime that there's a raise.
So what I hear you saying, Ms. Shelton, because I don't think I can give you the answer tonight, but we can bring it to you next week, is if we were to increase from 25 to 30, how much more would that be, one, on the operating fund? So how much would it potentially lose? And two, how much cost saving would that be back to the employee? Is that correct?
Right.
Okay, so this tonight is a presentation.
Yep.
What we can do is bring it to you next Monday,
Thank you.
all right, with those answers.
I can actually tell you how much it'll cost. It'll cost about $70,000 to increase by about 5%. So if we increase that discount by 5%, it's going to cost the district about $70,000, or the kin fund.
And so then I have a follow-up question, so maybe I should put it at the end for our agenda item for next week, because then I want to know, so what does that do to their bottom line, right? It reduces it by $70,000.
Exactly.
But what does that do to their expenses? What does that do to their net, their nonprofit, so they don't make money, but their surplus, like, there's an impact, right? $70,000 is not insignificant.
Right.
To their budget.
Right.
So I'd love to understand that.
And Ms. Shelton, we'll just bring it, because you've asked the question, we'll just bring it
Thank you.
next
Yeah,
week.
and I think right now, I'm not sure anybody's recommending increasing it, if I'm misunderstanding. I mean, we're going to hold, right now, the recommendation is to hold it 25%.
Yes.
So, yeah, but they can bring that other information.
And before we move on, back to the substitute teachers, we don't have the pay scale for substitutes. What is the current rate for substitutes, and are they, is that the budget part of the fund balance, or is that another separate budget? And how many hours do we estimate for substitutes?
So we would, just when we build our budget, we estimate how much we use the prior year, how much we paid subs. And if we have a rate change or anything like that, we'll build it into the budget. Right now, I don't think there's any proposal for a change to the sub pay. And so in the budget will be as part of just paying those subs, as always.
Yeah, what is the
Oh,
hourly rate?
I'll need
Whether
help with
you're
that.
certified or not certified, like, there's different payments.
Friday's higher pay?
The current certified teacher rate is 120. Our non-certified teachers 110, and our long-term is 150. And for special education instructional assistants, it's $98, translates to an hourly rate. We do give an extra amount on Fridays when they sub on Fridays.
Those were all per day.
Per day,
Okay, so
yes.
those are per day rates.
Sorry, to clarify, yes, those were all per day.
And is there any recommendation for us to increase those rates to attract more substitutes so that we can relieve this issue?
Are we short on subs? The last time I looked, we have thousands. It's not that it was the number of subs.
Correct.
Right.
We've been fortunate to continue to hire subs and have a good pool of subs. I think it's really just monitoring on certain days, as we said with Mr. Mendez, we do monitor and look at kind of the frequency. So if anything, we're looking to target kind of how we have on Fridays where we see an increase in the number of subs, and that's helped to help fill rate.
Okay,
So
thank
we
you.
constantly look at that and look at campuses to see where those campuses may struggle and look at different incentives or opportunities to help increase the coverage for the subs we currently have that we employ.
And do we advertise that? How do we get our subs? Do they just sign up and we select them? Or do we have some sort of, like on the back of the bus, it says we need drivers? we put teacher shirts, we need subs.
Since we've had a healthy pool and constant hiring, we haven't gone to an extensive, marketing for substitutes. Our efforts have been on like the regular employees, teachers, bus drivers, assistants. But we do, during our retirement reception, encourage all those to come back to us, which we had a large number. And those that attend the job fair, always we say, come sign up to be a sub if we don't have a job for you. So we do try to push those who just express interest in NEISD.
And again, Miss Landry, it's not a numbers issue. We have a lot of subs. It's whether I'll take that job sub problem. I don't want to do like, I speak to some subs and they're like, yeah, so I only sub at this school, period. Or I only sub in these classrooms because I know that teacher, right? Or I don't ever sub over there because I don't go there. Like, that's some of the stuff we battle. Because some folks will go in, and if they didn't have a good experience, they won't go back. They just won't. Because they say, I don't need to, I do this for whatever. And that's how it's going to go. Or I just don't do it on Fridays because Fridays are my day off, and I like my, whatever. I mean, it's, so I don't think it's a quantity issue. I think there's some other factors at play in that.
We average about 1,800 subs.
Active in the system or working?
Yes, active in the system. I mean, they vary on how frequent they take jobs, but yes, active subs in the system.
Yeah.
Okay.
And again, I'll tell you one particular, as I was doing out campus visits this year, and the teacher's like, it's so frustrating to me because I had a sub and then they dropped it. And then another one picked it up and then they dropped it. And then another one picked it up and they dropped it. And so from a teacher or a para or whoever has put it in, that's frustrating because you think, as a good employee, I've taken care of my business, only that somebody then drops it.
Do we restrict those who do that frequently?
Yes, we do monitor that, and then we also do ask our subs to at least sub 5 days a month. So we do look for anyone who's subbing less than that to try to see if there's reasons they can't commit to that many days. So that's what we do try to ask of our subs who sign up and are employed.
And so on average, they meet that requirement of 5 days a month, and there's 1,800 of them?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Reimbursing teacher certification costs, test costs. For us, it was one of the many surprises in HB2. The commissioner is all about teacher certification this year, and so we saw in this legislative session a ton of things coming through about teacher certification. And HB2 waives certification exam fees for special education bilingual education for the first administration of the exam. So those people taking that exam for the first time will have that fee waived, and the state's, even better, the state's paying for it. And so this is a really good thing. It'll be interesting to see if the state expands on this, because it really was getting teachers certified was a real big push from the commissioner this year. They also asked about stipends for coaches who obtain a CDL. Right now, we are paying coaches supplemental pay anytime they drive for athletic events. And so they just have to put that in, and then they get a supplemental payment on their check for each event that they drive the bus for their athletic events.
But if they don't have a CDL, or they
can't drive.
they're not qualified to
Yeah.
drive. And is that a challenge where we're finding we are overwhelming individuals who do and have an opportunity to have more individuals in the pool?
I think it's pretty standard that coaches drive buses. So it's been around for quite some time. And I think in small districts, it's, they really have no choice. And so I think
I will
it's.
say it can be a challenge. If you have new coaches that haven't gotten certified, then it falls on one or two coaches at that school that carry the burden. So it can be a problem. But it's a lengthy process, and we actually do our own certifications here in the district. But it takes time. It takes time for those coaches to
we
get
have a
it.
training program
Yep.
where they can
Yep.
earn their CDL
Yep.
through us at no expense to the driver.
And Rudy, what time, when a coach is hired without a CDL, we give them a certain time in order to earn that, correct?
Yes, sir. We
How
usually
long?
it's usually that year, that school year, so that way they can get certified.
Right.
If they're hired before school starts, obviously it's easier with scheduling. Once the school year starts, as a coach, it's kind of difficult to find that extra time, so that's why we extended for that year.
Okay.
But if we want to hang on to good people, sometimes it doesn't always happen, so.
And do they get to do that training during their normal hours, or is that, because my peer here said it's 100 hours of videos?
Deb, I'm sorry, I don't know when it happens. I think most of the time, Ms. Caldwell was saying, in the summer is the majority of them. Again, when they're hired early, they can do that. In the summer during the school year, I don't know the number of hours, Ms. Caldwell.
So again, we had some coaches go through it this summer. For example, they're going through it right now. And there's a recertification process for those who have to be recertified for their CDL, and also brand new CDL certifications. And so my understanding is there's a percentage of the coaching staff at every campus that needs to have a CDL, and Kelly Parker and our HR department tracks that, and then works with our trainers in our transportation department to make sure that they get certified. There is a series of online videos that they can watch before they actually get behind the wheel of the testing. And that, again, that behind the wheel time, we try to knock that out in the summer.
This slide is throwing me off, and I feel like I'm completely off my game today. At the risk of, is that a requirement in the job description that as a coach you have to be CDL certified?
Yes.
It is?
It is in the job description.
Okay. All right.
And just to kind of put a bow on this, so for the recommendation to give stipends to coaches who obtain a CDL, we provide the CDL training free of cost to the coach. It's part of their job requirement, and so that is already a fulfilled request.
Yeah. And then when they drive in those extracurricular events, they receive supplemental pay for doing that driving to that event.
And then if I remember correctly, like if they do it over a weekend, then that's even more, like if they're going to an event that's out of town, they get additional. Am I remembering that correctly?
I'm not sure, but we can check.
Okay. I think that came up before. I just want to make sure that everybody's aware that we're doing those things for our staff. Thank you.
All right, so let's take all these pieces and put them together and take a look at our expenditures for the general fund. As you can see, our 24-25 forecast and our 25-26 forecast, we have a growth in expenditures primarily in salaries and benefits, as the bulk of HB2 is required to be spent on raises. And you can see our percentage grow from 85.9 to 86.4. Most of the other categories are just ups and downs, as tend to happen whenever we're doing projections and changes in the year. So a projection of 587 to 602 million. These are our preliminary changes. This is, we're backing off that 1.5% retention that was paid in 24-25. The campus staffing changes that we talked about last time and our non-campus staffing changes that we talked about. We are changing our calendar, our school calendar. We're going from 177 days to 180 days. So that means there's some staff like bus drivers and instructional assistants who'll, their work schedule will increase by 3 days. So we'll have additional costs associated with that calendar change. In for school year 24-25, it was the very tail end of ESSER. And so we had some salaries that were paid out at the beginning of the school year in ESSER. So those ESSER funds are gone now, so that'll come back into the general fund. We've added some costs for the teacher incentive allotment. This is our first year of having a local designation plan and having those values, so that'll increase our expenditures. We have a really rough estimate here for HB2 and their early education compliance. So they're providing additional funding for early education, which is pretty much meant to cover K through 3 reading and math skills. And so this is really just us putting a placeholder for what they're going to push down that we're required to spend in terms of tutoring, in terms of compliance with that spending allotment. But we're receiving that revenue. So it's not like they're making a requirement, but we're getting that revenue for it. We have some prior year one-time costs that are going to come in and out, and a bunch of stuff that's going to offset each other, and a lot of things that are too little. If we talked about everything, we'd have 20 slides here. So our net change for everything else is about $600,000. As we keep building through HB2, we're going to tweak everything constantly. I've been sitting here for a couple of minutes thinking about something on that early education compliance that I think I want to change. We got a new analysis on it today, and so I'm like, yeah, I think I want to change that now. But it's just understand as we unpack everything, we're going to keep making tweaks to our forecast. But this is pretty close to those kinds of changes. 14.2 million in total of the expenditures. This has the raise alone. If we want to add in a retention supplement for 1.5%, that's just another 1.6 million in here. When we walk through our...
Wait, can I question that,
Yes,
that
ma'am.
page? On the TIA,
Yes,
that 3 million, that doesn't come from the state?
it does. And so it increases our expenditures, but it increases our revenue too, and they wash against each other.
Okay.
So it's not an increase to our deficit, it's an increase to expenditures. Yeah. Oh, wait.
So right there. So when you see the raise, remember, all she's showing you is that's an increase to an expenditure. She's not counting the money that they're giving to us into that.
We're going to see that on the next
That's just
slide.
to show you, like, this is what it's going to cost, right? This next slide then shows you all of their money coupled with what we're talking about and where your forecast stands at that point.
Before we leave that slide, are the consolidations of schools included in
It's in that staffing number. It's in the other number. It's buried in all of those things.
Thank you.
Yes,
So,
Okay, I'm looking at this, and if we continue on this trajectory, we're looking at a 2.1 fund balance in 27-28. Isn't that, and also in 26-27, a 2.7? Correct me if I'm wrong, but you have to have what fund balance before TEA comes in and starts screaming?
So they start getting really nervous once you drop below 2. I'll point out that this time last year, that 27-28 number was 1.3 months. So
We are getting better.
We are getting significantly better.
And look, this is what I want you all when you look at this, and I anticipated your question, Ms. V, okay?
Shocker.
What I want you all to realize when you're looking at that fund balance, this is important to note. That is like So when she shows you the forecast for 25-26 to end at 3.2, that's saying everything stays the same. There are no changes. 26-27 shows you 2.7 because you are still operating just like you were the prior year. My point is there's going to be things that are doing, like if you lose kids, well, you're going to lose some money, but you're also going to lose some staff. So that's not calculating that.
So
that's like saying everything is same throughout.
We do have a basic cut for staff for losing kids, but it's not targeted. It's just a generic kind of minimal kind of cut. It's not anything above and beyond. And so you have a loss in revenue from the loss of students, and you have a minimal cut to staff in these projections. But it's not us doing anything above and beyond the minimum of that piece. And so it's important to note that those forecasts are kind of your worst case scenario in that sense.
So can I go back to the TIA for a minute?
Sure.
So $3 million for that program, am I recalling it right? It was for 108 teachers. They're going to get that 308.
308.
308, correct, Ms. Witten? Yes. Right.
So 308 teachers are going to get that $3 million. Is that accurate?
I'm putting a placeholder in the budget for the possibility of TIA. I don't want anybody to think that's a precise number or that's exactly what they're sharing. That's just me putting in a placeholder in revenue and a placeholder in expenditures for a rough estimate.
So that's the worst case scenario.
Well, there is no worst case scenario for TIA because the money flows to us from the state.
Okay.
And the expenses flow out to the employees. So
Okay.
it's not really a cost to us. Okay. So much improved over where we sat last year at this point in time. Little disclaimer on 24-25, we are waiting on some detailed analysis from how the comptroller is interpreting a hold harmless for property taxes. So I've got my fingers crossed that that number for 24-25 is going to get better. I'm not very optimistic about that rolling into 25-26. The comptroller is basically changing a calculation, and so I really think we have the impact going forward. We're just thinking we might be able to get more money because he's not changing it until next year. I don't want you to get your hopes up about it because it's a possibility either way, but I also don't want you looking at me funny when it comes in better later, because I'm leaning towards we're going to get to keep that money for 24-25 than for future years. So that'll get a little bit better, and that brings that fund balance up a little bit more. Looking at next year, again, we talked about the HB2 bringing in more revenue, the compensation plan, rolling that through, and then 26-27 and 27-28, we really are just letting basic formulas roll in those. We're not changing compensation, we're not increasing health insurance, and we've got a basic projection of loss of kids and the minimal loss of staff related to that. None of our cost containment, things that we will do implemented in there to help offset that, and kind of your worst case scenario. Mind you, that in 2027, we'll have another legislative session. Now, not saying we're optimistic at this point in time that we would get more money, just a reminder that 27-28 would be post another session, and anything could change at that point in time. All right, so let's talk about school nutrition. For years, school nutrition had excess fund balance. We are finally at a point where we're now down to more of a break even. In previous years, once COVID hit, we had to combine our main National School Lunch Program and our summer feeding program. The feds did some really wild and crazy things during that time frame where we were feeding kids during the school year out of the summer feeding program. I really don't want to break anybody's brains because mine's tired of thinking about it all. But at this point in time, we're finally separating those two funds again as we're required to. And this $13 million in other sources was separating those two funds. And so now we have the National School Lunch Program, which is what y'all are responsible for adopting, solo, and no longer including that summer feeding program, which is normally a much smaller program. It was just during COVID and those few years after COVID that it was really bearing the lift. And that was when in 21, 22, and everybody ate for free all the time. That was how that was being funded. It was a very unique thing that the feds did. So our revenue will decrease overall because of that one-time switch from bringing in the money as we split those two funds. But we will be increasing the rest of revenue because of the increasing federal reimbursement rates. We're recommending an increase to meal prices, and we're increasing the number of serving days from 177 to 180. When you look at meal prices, they haven't changed for a long time. And so we will try to rebalance the fund. We have had them purposely operating at a deficit for the last few years as we've been trying to spend down their too high of a fund balance. We're back down to more of a break even with them. And so as we try to rebalance the fund, we're recommending an increase that, again, we're really looking at very reasonable prices for meals still. Asterisks on the adult prices because those will probably have to change once the federal reimbursement rates come up. There's a formula that's required by law for us to calculate what that meal price is, and it's based off of what those federal reimbursements rates, and at this point in time, we're still just estimating those. We don't know those for certain. So once we know those for certain, then we'll be able to adjust those prices.
Susie, I have a quick question. So when we fill out that form that's the free, or it is just part of our packet, the free and reduced, what is the threshold for free versus reduced? Or is it free and reduced?
There's one threshold for free and another threshold for reduced.
Okay.
And I cannot give you those off the top of my head. I don't know if anybody's here that could. But yes, so if you're certain percentage off of poverty line, then you'll qualify for reduced. And if you're even more, then it'll be free.
And my understanding is it's a sliding scale to also how many people are in your household.
Yes.
So it's not just 50,002 people, it's that number will change depending on if you have 6 people in your household. So
Yes.
it's a rubric that's published by the federal government, and that is how people find where they are on that free and reduced rate.
Okay, I'm concerned because I know that people are struggling right now horribly. And can you go back? I'm worried. I know this doesn't sound like a lot, for example, going from 240 to 265 and 270 to 295. But with the increase in all the other expenses that people are experiencing, I'm really worried about this because that adds up over time. And will it affect our kids? Are we, I know that maybe somebody doesn't meet the threshold for reduced lunches, but yet they have expenses on the other side. And will this cause these kids to have to skip meals sometimes? I know it doesn't seem like a lot, but I'm worried about this.
This definitely only impacts the kids who don't qualify for reduced or free. So and there are a lot of campuses that all the children on those campuses, because they're CEP campuses, eat for free no matter what their qualifications are. So we're really only talking about students who don't qualify and aren't at a CEP campus. So the population here is not as big of a population as our total population could be. The fund needs the additional revenue to break even, and so it's a balance here of rising food costs
and those kinds of things. So when we put it all together, this is where we felt most comfortable. We didn't want to go over this price increase. And it's been years since they've seen any price increases, because for the years before this, during COVID, everybody was eating for free. So I don't think there's been an increase since prior to COVID. So it's been a long time where we've been sitting at the same rates and experiencing inflation in our food costs and our labor costs.
Do we have a safety net or anything for kids that, let's say, mom and dad didn't have the $2.95 or $2? Do we have a safety net for those children so they do not go hungry?
Yes.
We serve them. Students are allowed to go negative on their cafeteria account.
Okay, so we're not leaving anybody behind and everybody's belly is full.
Yeah, and Miss Glossen's team does a great job, because every year we get folks that want to pay off, and so they actually, like, for instance, when my son finished high school, there was some leftover money. They called me, hey, what do you want to do with it? I gave it back to them to use for kids for negative balances. So every year they make phone calls like that, and a lot of folks give it back to then help do. But bottom line is they may not get the meal that's there, but they're going to get something to eat that day.
Okay, all right, I feel better now, all right.
All right, so we're also
How many CEP schools are there?
Oh, it's quite a few.
Sharon, can you come give us the number? I was looking for it earlier in my notes and I didn't find it quickly.
I swear if you'd asked me last week, I could have told you, but I've got too many numbers in my head today.
Sorry.
Yeah, so currently CEP is 2/3 of our campuses, and the rest 1/3 are non-CEP.
Okay, so for expenditures, we're looking at, with consolidation, with restructuring our meal offerings and our staffing. So reductions in labor, reduction in food costs, we'll have to redesign a few things there. And bringing our total expenditures to about 40.1 million. And when we talk about that, also some of this will go down because we've got a projected enrollment loss as we have for each year. So we'll be feeding fewer kids. And in the prior year, we had a bunch of capital projects that we were using to help spend down that fund balance. Those costs won't translate to the next year's budget, so that'll be a reduction. And our commodities, as our enrollment has decreased, and our number of lunches served, the state basically gives us money to buy food. And this statewide entitlement is decreasing. So we have a revenue and an expense that matches for it. And so that's going down too. And so that'll cause some of our commodity purchases to decline. When we put it all together.
Yes. Just real quick, what does changes in menu options mean?
So
it's to choose from, or
yes, it's just changing what options are available.
Won't take away healthy options. It'll just change some of the menu options.
There will be a lot of analysis. We actually just talked about what reports to pull out of the system to see which menu items don't get picked as often, because sometimes you're putting out things that people don't eat. I hate to tell you that those may be some of those healthier items. Enchiladas are staying. I think Wednesdays cannot be complete without enchiladas.
It's practically state law, right, to have enchiladas in the school cafeteria. If it's not, we should request the legislature to pass that. And as a reminder, when we do menu planning, there are federal nutrition guidelines we have to meet across that week, that month, and so that will continue.
Yep. Ultimately, so we're projecting a small loss for 24-25, and pretty much we're budgeting a break even for 25-26. And so that's the exciting world of school nutrition. Now on to the even more exciting world of debt service. So just a heads up with debt service, before my head explodes, we've had a lot of bills passed. We didn't talk about them in depth during this session because it's debt service. And some of this
we may end up adopting this budget and then amending it as we get through and analyze what these bills are going to do. Two things that we haven't worked through are any of our projections here are property tax relief. So the state's going to provide increases to the homestead exemption. Well, that impacts both the tax collections on our M&O side and on our debt service side. And so, but those get offset by state aid. So it's really just moving our revenue from one category to another. So we don't spend a lot of time stressing over that when we're in these meetings because the total doesn't change. It just changes from one category to the other. And so here in debt service, we still have a lot to figure out on some of these bills, how the hold harmless works for the change in the homestead exemption and some of the restrictions that they're putting in on debt service. So just FYI, some of this may get a budget amendment in August. But we are looking at doing a refunding. That action item is on tonight's agenda. And so we're at a point where we can take, like refinancing your mortgage is basically what we're talking about. So we take existing debt and we go and pay it off and issue new debt at a lower rate to save the taxpayer money. And so that's what this other resource is here, is we're projecting to do a transaction in August because it will save our taxpayers money. And so we are all about that. So this is our proposed revenue budget of about $400 million. But again, the big chunk of this is coming from us just flipping debt to lower the rate and save money. Expenditures, $120 million in principal and $44 million in interest. So $405 million in expenditures and appropriations. When we put that together, it's a $7.8 million change to fund balance, ending in $212 million. Then one thing we have to make sure we have enough money to do, because our fiscal year is July to June, but the money we collect through June has to pay off the August 1 debt service payment. So we have to make sure in our fund balance we have enough money set aside to pay off the August 1 debt service. And so here we're just showing you our fund balance at June 30th, 2025 would be $212 million, but we need $30 million set aside for some qualified school construction bonds that we set up in 2010 that will come due in 2027. This is something that the general fund has been setting aside money for to pay this off. So each year, the general fund sends about $2 million over to the debt service fund so that in 2027, we can pay off those QSCAB bonds. Those were issued back in 2010 through a program where the federal government gives us a discount on interest. So it was almost an interest-free loan, and we used it to do HVAC upgrades back in the day. We have to set aside money for early payoff of principal if we collect more in taxes, and then that August 1 debt service, and we still will have a healthy fund balance in debt service. And that is as exciting as debt service can ever get.
But things to point out, I mean, I know it can put people to sleep, but over the years, Mr. Villarreal, Ms. Lackhorn have saved our taxpayers a lot of money by being very smart with this debt service. And so, like, to the tune of $40 and $50 million at a time.
Since you brought it up, I was going to save it for that. But up to today and after this coming refunding, we probably have saved since 2012 $235 million as far as on interest costs.
So where your head might explode and you might want to fall asleep, it's very important, the work that they're doing for us. So thank you all.
All right, so some key takeaways. We've read HB2 a couple of times. A lot of other people have read HB2 a couple of times. We've all talked about HB2 together. Still having conversations just a few minutes before meeting started about it. And but till TEA tells us everything, things could change. So TEA gets to make rules about just about everything we saw. how they're going to check to see that we gave the raises the way they intended for us to give the raises, how we can spend the money in that early education allotment that they're going to require, all those things. And so there's still, some uncertainty there as we await their rulemaking. They're pretty good about issuing the rules for the things that they know are most critical, so we should see information coming from them pretty quickly on the raises. We should see information coming pretty quickly on those other pieces. Our compensation includes required raises and additional targeted adjustments. And just as a reminder, when we budget, that the budget will be a bigger deficit than the forecast. Today, we talked about forecast. That's what we think we're really going to do. But when we adopt the budget, we adopt it as if we hired everybody that we said we would or could, and they were here the entire year, so no vacancies whatsoever. That doesn't ever happen. And so, but we want our budget to reflect, because it's a legal authorization to spend, and we have authorized the hiring of so many staff members, we want those two things to match there. And so, but not every district does that, but we present you with, basically a worst-case scenario. And we also budget that everybody spends every dollar of their budget. And Dan sits on his budget every year and doesn't spend hardly any of it. And so we project that because we know he's never going to spend it, even if people call him begging for it. It's a no, so we know. So just bear in mind that budget's going to be bigger, but today we're talking about what the forecast really is, because that's really where your decision points are about where we're going to end up, not necessarily what the budget is going to be. So next week, we will go through, not all of it. Well, yeah, you all saw it last May, a lot of slides that break down the budget and where all the budget goes into different places. All right. Any other questions?
Questions? Good. I will have to say that looking back at some of the previous presentations and looking at forecasted versus where we are with general fund forecasts now, it's pretty close. You're not too far off. I mean, expenditures on some of these, like 26, 27, you're within like $3 million.
Yeah.
And so it's pretty consistent. So I guess my point with that is that Ms. Lackhorn, Mr. Villarreal, all their folks take very good care of this district and bring us pretty solid recommendations. I know it's not a done deal, but they have a pretty proven track record on getting us where we need to be. So, any other questions?
Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much, and we'll see you Monday for the next round.
Number 3.
All right. Item B, Facilities Steering Committee recommendations for a long-range facility plan. Ms. Caldwell.
Thank you, Mr. President, members of the board, Dr. Micah, executive staff, and guests. Tonight, our Facility Steering Committee is going to be bringing recommendations for our long-range facility plan. Why is this needed? Might be a question that you ask. If you'll go ahead and advance to the next slide. Education Code and your own board policy, CS Legal, outlines the need for a long-range facility plan. And board policy specifically covers the elements and the process and the compliance of that plan. So your plan started, if you'll go to the next slide, back in September of 2023, when you approved the contract with Gordian, a third-party vendor, to assess all of our facilities. That neutral third-party assessment is one of those elements that's required in a long-range facility plan, is the age and condition of your buildings. So you started that September of 2023. Gordian made that report to you August of 2024 of those conditions by cluster. And specifically, we talked about age of school versus renovation age of schools. Y'all might remember that. And they said at that time we were in good shape, that we were in a situation as a district where we could pick the projects and not have the projects pick us. At that meeting also in August, we talked about next steps, and that next step, one of those was to create a facilities steering committee. We asked you and Dr. Micah to submit nominees for that committee, appointees for that committee, And they had their first organizing meeting in December of 2024. And then they continued to meet all the way through June. 2 meetings in January, we're diving in on that Gordian facility data. In February, they had 2 meetings to look at other needs. These are things that weren't assessed by Gordian, such as buses, technology, parking lots, playgrounds. We specifically left those things out of the Gordian assessment because we felt we had the capacity within our district to assess those things, and it also saved us some money on the contract with them. So we handled that in-house. So they looked at that. The committee looked at that in February. In March, Mrs. Lackhorn brought a school finance presentation. Mr. Cabello, who's over in the speaker's box today, our Executive Director of Construction Management and Engineering, brought a bond history overview. And they started as a facility steering committee to think about what would be an investment goal. How would that look? Because you have to know what your budget is before you start picking projects. It's quickly easy to get a really long list and be over budget. So they started with an initial investment goal recommendation, and they did that in March. In April, they developed rubrics that would help them score projects, prioritize projects. And that work happened in April. They started to actually score projects by a subcommittee. I'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute. Then in May, they identified what their recommendations were to you for that long-range facility plan. And we also brought in our bond attorney to review bond elections. In June, we had our final project meeting for them to finalize the projects that they're going to be bringing to you tonight, along with that investment strategy. And of course, we're making our presentation tonight. Their charge was to serve as an advisory committee to Dr. Micah and to you, rooted in the Balanced District Scorecard 4.1. And we told them that their charge was to meet until the work was completed. Initially, Jorge and I thought 8 meetings would happen, but we ended up with 11 meetings. They were 2 to 2.5 hours in length. Our committee members were troopers. They stayed to the end. They showed up. You appointed and Dr. Micah appointed 16 community members, 6 parents, 7 principals, and we also had 14 staff who served as subject matter experts for us. They met in whole group when they needed to get common information, so everybody got to hear about all the project needs and had an opportunity to understand what the needs were across the district. And then they broke into subcommittees to actually get into that project scoring. And these subcommittees, everybody had an opportunity to choose what subcommittee they wanted to serve on. Most everybody got first choice, some got second choice, and so these subcommittees are a process that we've used in the past when planning facility investment. These are ways to think about projects, organize projects, because it's just a way to get a list together, right? There's no necessarily right or wrong way to organize facility projects or asset projects, but these are ways that the district has done it in the past. And you can see those 5 committees that are on the screen and the types of projects that they included. So I'd like to invite up the chair of the Facility Steering Committee, Fred Morrison, to cover the recommendations that they're bringing forward to you tonight.
Thank you, Deb. Mr. President, board members, Dr. Micah, executive staff, and guests. Thank you for having me tonight. I am Fred Morrison, and I am happy to have served as chair of the Facility Steering Committee. I've been involved with Northeast for many years and previously served as chair of the Citizen Bond Advisory Committee, or CBAC. During that time, we saw tremendous growth, and CBAC monitored the construction of many new schools and facilities. What makes tonight's report different is that we are bringing forward recommendations to invest in the buildings we have and to modernize our assets. Deb mentioned that the committee at times met in subcommittees. Breaking into smaller groups enabled us to address close to 2,000 projects identified as critical need for the next 3 to 5 years. Each subcommittee had a list of projects unique to them and developed scoring rubrics to prioritize the projects within the investment goal or budget agreed upon by the whole committee. For example, subcommittee rubrics included elements such as student impact, age of facility, and student recruitment.
The rubrics help subcommittees score projects and prioritize those to bring to the full committee. Starting with the Safety and Security Subcommittee on the screen is a high-level list of recommended projects. They prioritized NEPD vehicles, perimeter fencing, cameras, keyless door access, secured entry vestibules, PA systems, exterior lighting, and a master key system. You have a more detailed list of the projects in your packet that provides insight into project scope. As an example, perimeter fencing applies to 2 campuses where replacement is needed. The Technology Subcommittee recommended projects that support student learning and the district's infrastructure. They prioritize student iPads and Chromebooks, teacher and staff laptops, technology and software to support CTE, fine arts, JRTC, copier machines, classroom AV systems, visitor badge Raptor scanners, and printers, and several projects related to infrastructure and cybersecurity. You have a more detailed list in your packet. Next is operations, and this subcommittee had by far the longest list of possible projects. This is the subcommittee that directly addressed the Gordian assessment data and also had other assets such as school buses. This subcommittee actually held extra meetings to get through all of the information. Starting with the Gordian data, the operations subcommittee identified HVAC systems, boilers, air handlers, fire alarm systems, digital controls, water heaters, restrooms, doors and windows, electrical, elevators, and roof projects. The list in your packet provides the locations of these projects. The Operations Committee also recommended buses, playgrounds, parking lots, and 2 campus-specific projects to address ongoing problems. The Extracurricular Subcommittee recommended a new auditorium for Churchill, high school and middle school stage, black box theater, dance studio upgrades, shade structures for the perimeter of the marching band area, artificial turf replacement for our high school fields and stadiums, improvements to Comalander Stadium, tennis center, and sports park, dehumidification equipment, also known as pool packs, for our natatoriums, stadium lighting, middle school tennis and gym floor resurfacing, and middle school and high school running track repair. The list in your packet provides additional details. Our final subcommittee, the Facilities Subcommittee, recommended kitchen and cafeteria upgrades at 2 campuses, upgrades at several CTE and magnet programs, renovation at 2 JROTC facilities, shade structures for the perimeter of the JROTC drill pads, and renovation to Littleton Gym. The project list in your packet contains additional detail. Overall, the Facilities Committee is recommending an investment of $495 million. You can see the breakdown by subcommittee on your screen. The committee also voted to include funds to manage the projects and provide a contingency if budget estimates are impacted by market volatility in labor or material costs. The committee received information about the district's budget and realized that the annual budget cannot cover the investment that is needed across the district. I think we saw a presentation that pretty much verifies that. That is why the committee brings forward a recommendation for you to order a bond election this November. The committee voted on this recommendation during our meeting on June 3rd, and you can see the results on the screen in support of a bond election. For those community members and parents who were unable to attend the meeting, a meeting recap was offered today, and an online option to vote was made available to ensure their voice was captured. As a committee, we know that this is just a recommendation, and that you as a board will carefully consider the option. The committee also recommended that facilities planning be revisited in 4 years. We acknowledge that 10 years between bond programs may create difficulty in keeping up with building maintenance and program advancements. We recommend not lapsing more than 5 years between bond programs. I am but one person in a committee of dedicated individuals. I would like to ask my fellow committee members who are here to please stand and be recognized. I also wish to thank Deb Caldwell and Jorge Cabello for their work and effort and the numbers of countless hours they spent to go from 5 meetings to 11 and 2.5 to sometimes 3 or 3.5, I think, for us to get our job done. Thank you for your time this evening.
Thank you,
We are
Mr.
happy to
Morrison.
take your questions.
Yeah, thank you. I do want to point out one thing in our packet that we received. The Gordian projects are actually listed as non-Gordian, so there's like 159 million, I think, for Gordian projects. I think it got mislabeled on the information that we got, so. Does anybody have any questions? Ms. Villarreal?
Okay, so you are recommending that we go for a bond, and so what would our next steps be, to do something like this? What does that involve?
Tonight is just a presentation, no action, for you to be able to have time with this information. The next steps to ordering election would happen in August. We would send the project lists that are being recommended tonight to the bond attorney so they can start looking to confirm that everything that's being recommended is eligible for a bond program. We did some pre-work on that, but they're that extra pair of eyes for safety. They will also then start organizing those projects into the required propositions that now are in law as far as ballot language goes, how it would be presented to the voters. So we would be working with our bond attorneys to get that in place so that if you choose to order the election, we will be ready in August for you to order that election.
And let's say everything goes really well, the voters love this idea, and they decide that they want this. How long would it take to complete these projects with the $495 million to do? How long, what would we be looking at? How many years?
I'm going to ask on Jorge Cabello, our resident expert on this, and drawing upon past bond experiences.
Absolutely, thank you. Very good question. 5 years will be the maximum time for this bond program will be implemented. The first year will be a planning year, designing the projects, hiring the architects, hiring the consultants, followed by bidding out the projects, the following as soon as the design is completed, and then implementing the projects. We will bring to you for your consideration, to the superintendent and to Deb, a very detailed schedule of the 5 years. Every single project that is being brought for your consideration will be identified by its planning, procurement, and implementation phase. And typically, the district has been very successful in implementing a Citizens Bond Advisory Committee, which is a committee similar to the Facility Steering Committee, which one of their charges is to ensure that the schedule that we will produce for your consideration is followed. What we promise the voters is going to be implemented on a particular schedule that is brought before your consideration and for your approval. So every single project that you have before you as a recommendation will be scheduled out in the different phases. So it's a 5-year program.
Okay, thank you.
Ms. Landry?
And I'm not sure, probably for Deb, how much was the last bond we got from the voters?
It was $495 million.
And that's over a 10-year period, is that the way?
It was a
you-
5-year program, but it's been 5 years since that was implemented.
Okay, so as one drops off, then another one comes in, and
Yeah.
the voters don't really see much change? Is that usually how it works?
Right, so we had a history as a district of being in a sequence of bond programs, so as one was wrapping up, another one was ramping up. As one was closing out, I should say, another was ramping up, so there was always overlap in bond programs, with our last one being in 2015. We usually do finish them in 5 years. That's the projects. Dan and Susie, of course, figure out the financial pieces of how long those bonds are paid off. So if your question is about that, I'd like to direct that to Dan.
More so what the voters are seeing in their tax statements and their bills.
Well,
Does it change what they see? I know sometimes we're talking about pennies and it's
Yes,
not
ma'am.
really a tax increase, but they have to approve it anyway.
Right, and we're hoping not to have to change our debt service rate. If we do, if the voters do pass this $495 million bond, we're not expecting a change in our debt service rate. We're hoping to be able to do it without any increases. So the debt service rate that we have right now, we should be able to tell our voters that's what it'll be without any increase, even though the language on the actual propositions will say that there will be a tax increase, but we would have to explain that there won't be. The only time you have an increase is if your property values go up, of course. But the debt service rate, we're hoping to keep it at 30 cents.
Okay, thank you.
And if I can add, we don't go out and sell the $495 million worth of bonds like day one. We have this program that we do commercial paper. So like for a year and a half, we use commercial paper, and the interest rates are really, really small. So the last bond issue we had $100 million that we would, construction management would need $100 million, and when we got to $100 million, then we would sell a bond. So they're not going to see an increase right away, because it's going to take some time, and then we go out to market to sell them. And then depending on the rates, we might do a variable rate or a fixed rate, but we bring all that to you all.
And I wish to correct my earlier statement. Our last bond, 2015, was $499,950,000.
Exactly.
Are these, in the papers we see where they say the project numbers, are those prioritized, or they're just the project numbers? Like, is item number one the most important and then the second most important, or this is just how many projects we have?
They're listed in random order,
Okay.
but each project was qualified through a rubric. And the projects that are before your consideration, they are the top-ranked projects for each category. But they're not listed in priority order in your data. It's all projects that are important for the district at this time.
Okay. And then last bond, this was a long time ago, but 2015, whoever was superintendent then kind of went around to all the impacted schools and talked to those communities. We'll continue that path?
I'll give him a call and see if he wants to come do it.
I know.
I mean, is that what, that's not what you were asking?
Well,
No,
it
I know.
was-
Look, if we get to August and you all call for a bond, right? It takes a lot of effort on our part to go out and not just speak to campuses, but speak to folks all over this district. And, I think, and Deb, correct me if I'm wrong, I don't want to talk for you, but I think this is something you all brought up and discussed as well in your meeting, correct?
Yes, there was lots of conversation and back and forth from the members of what would your neighbors need to know about a long-range facility plan? So we've already started to think through what would we need to tell our community about an investment. We were at that time not talking about a bond, but just generally speaking, what would we need to inform the community about? So yes, we as a committee started to think through some of those messages. They as a committee talked about what their potential role could be as citizens out there in the community. I think someone brought up the example of being at an HEB line, what they would say to their neighbor, how they would justify it to their neighbor was some other conversation. So we did talk and begin some of those talks about it, but it is definitely a heavy lift. But the good news is we have past experience with communicating the projects to our community.
I just have one more
I
question.
think Ms. Shelton had a question
Oh,
first.
I'm sorry.
Let's get to her. and
That's
then-
okay.
So sorry.
Lisa asked one of mine, so that got me down to one. But I want to piggyback on the first question that Ms. Thompson asked, and that was the ranking. And you said they're not in any particular order, just that these are priority. How do we, assuming we say yes, how do we then, Ms. Caldwell, I guess, determine or what goes first? Right? Because as I look at this list, there are things that I would love to have first. But I'm sure there are things that you would love to have first. So how do we prioritize what's going to be the first thing done with the bond?
So everything on the list is the recommendation tonight for $495 million. As far as how projects get scheduled, there's a lot of factors. It's not always just the highest priority gets done first. And I'm going to let Jorge talk about when we go and bid projects, sometimes it makes sense to lump things together. Sometimes it makes sense to do it alone. So as you're in the construction world, timing matters. And sometimes the most important thing isn't done first because it could also be the biggest, hardest project as well. So I'm going to let Jorge talk a little bit about that.
Absolutely.
And also, Ms. Shelton, just remember, it's about limiting disruption to the learning environment. And that's one of the greatest challenges
Right.
that he'll have if this goes through.
Right, okay.
Absolutely. We'll have to, there are many dynamics into putting together a schedule for a particular campus. And as Dr. Micah mentioned, is the school environment, making sure that we don't disrupt instruction because that's the primary at each of the campuses. So we have to analyze each project and group them together. Projects that do not require a design team, an architect and engineers, is just purchasing equipment and have the technical staff install them. Those can go out first because they're very low-hanging fruit. They can be done very, very easily. Other projects that require an architectural design team to analyze what the design will consist of and prepare the documents, the construction documents, the architectural documents, that can take anywhere between 8 months to a year. So those projects will be ongoing as soon as you give us the go-ahead, but it's during the design phase, not the construction phase. So in the most part, the campuses will not see any activity other than having engineers and architects visit the sites, the campuses to collect data. Once the projects are completed, architectural-wise, then it goes out to bid, and that can take anywhere between 3 to 4 months when we hire the contractor who's going to do the project. The contractor will have his own subcontractors. We go through that process, and then we have the actual ribbon, the start of construction, where we turn dirt, and we can have an actual inviting the community to join us into the groundbreaking ceremony. The construction can be anywhere between 8 to 2 years, depending on the nature of the project. And then we have the ribbon cutting ceremony where we turn over the project to the campus. So it varies. There are many dynamics. We will bring to you for your consideration all those dynamics figured out, thought out, and which projects can go first. But it's based on meticulous thought on which projects and the why certain projects can go before others. But we're not going to play preferential treatment. We're not going to treat one project over another and delay a project because a particular principal sent me a Christmas card. I'm not going to be doing that.
Dang, I mean, it's in the back. It's everything's in the back. If you want to just make sure D2's taken care of up front.
Absolutely.
No?
Yeah.
No, not gonna happen.
So if I could add, when the committee did the prioritization, none of that entered into it. The fact of getting the job done or what was the best economic way of getting the job done. It was more of how many students is it going to affect, how many campuses, how old the campuses are.
Okay,
All those things were more what we valued.
okay,
Yeah.
okay.
We know that the construction management job will get them built on
Right.
time and on scope and on budget.
And under budget.
Yeah.
I love
Oh,
it.
under budget, I like that.
So then the last question I have, and I think I know the answer, Ms. Caldwell, is before we choose an architect, there's going to be an RFP. And before we choose a construction company, he or she, that's going to be our contractor, there will be an RFP, correct? we're not going to just go with who we've gone with in the past necessarily.
Right, each project will have a series of design documents and RFPs that will have to be fulfilled.
Okay. Thank you.
Thanks. I think Ms. Villarreal had your question, and then we'll go to.
She nailed it.
Okay, got it. Ms. Landry and then Ms. Cox.
So once these projects are in queue and the work is begun or being done, do we have a process in place to go back and update the Gordian results to show the lifespan of the work that's being done and the amount of time before we revisit?
Your question made Dr. Micah very happy.
Yes, it did.
The
You can answer
The Gordian service that you purchased included a dashboard for us to input and update project life. So as projects are completed, we will put that in there, and their expected lifespan will recalculate, and we'll be able to pull that data 20 years from now, depending on the life of the project, right? A chiller can last 20 to 25 years, right? So as soon as we address some HVAC pieces, that clock will start ticking again. So the Gordian platform lets us do that. We also can download that into an Excel document if we want to manipulate it ourselves, because we have a lot of folks here who love Excel and love to work that way. But yes, that is the expectation. That is the expectation, that we will continue to manage the Gordian assessment data by updating those projects as we touch them. And also, you have already approved this fiscal year some projects, HVAC chillers at Reagan and at Churchill, that will get updated in the Gordian data as well.
That is the beauty of it, Ms. Landry, and I think that's the wisdom of the board when they approved the Gordian contract, is that while it was a sizable expense, it has now provided a document that will live on. As we will keep it updated, and it will just tell us we will not have to go out and do that again.
I like that answer. Thank you.
Ms. Cox?
Okay, I have two questions. They're very different. One is about the debt service rate. So you said it would remain unchanged. Is that I don't understand that. Is that because we won't lower it, but we won't raise it, so it just remains flat?
Yes, ma'am. Yeah, we have some capacity that we've built in as we've been defeasing some of our debt. We haven't reduced the debt service, so that's why we should be able to do it without any increases.
Okay, thank you. I understand that. The other one is more specific. So here under the district maintenance and operations, I'm looking very specifically at upgrades to parking lots, that category there. I don't know what page it's, page 11, sorry. It's page 11. So it's listed here, the upgrades to parking lots and whatnot, and the schools are all listed out. So does that mean that this is a done deal? So if someone were to know of a parking lot or a campus that needed upgrades, what's the process of introducing or maybe making that suggestion or getting feedback on making that suggestion of another campus?
Yeah, so just to address the high level, is this a done deal? I will say that we will continue to refine projects, especially the cost side. So as we continue to watch the market volatility, as we continue to work with the subject matter experts to really understand the need that's out there, these prices can continue to be refined. So what we might present to you in the future, in August, if you ask for that, could look a little bit different. We will continue to refine this list. But going specifically to your question of parking lots, so an analysis was done, and this was what was in the greatest need. This is what was the highest priority of need. Absolutely, you can send me or Jorge, anybody in the community can send us a project for consideration. We will look at it and consider it. As we adjust numbers, if things come down, there may be room to add a few other campuses that we can't do district-wide right now. There will be maybe that ability. So definitely email us. We'll take a look at it. There's also some parking lot maintenance that also just happens within Barry's department or Jorge's department. So there might also be something that's already in the queue that we're handling internally.
Okay, great.
Ms. Shelton?
Mr. Morrison,
Yes.
Did the members of your committee receive this very detailed report that we're looking at, that she's referencing now, with the priority and the number, the dollars associated?
We basically made that list.
Okay,
Yeah.
so, okay.
We created that list with our prioritization and our rubrics.
And the
knowing
cost.
the dollars.
Okay, thank you.
Each of the subcommittees had a budget number. So they knew what they needed to stick between, between those lines, right? And not overspend if, yeah. So some projects didn't make the cut, basically.
Right.
Yeah.
And for those members who were not present to receive the paper copy, they've been given an email version.
Thank you.
And one more question that, on following up on Ms. Cox's question, the upgrades to the parking lots, for example, are listed as non-Gordian projects. What was the process to get the prioritization and the current condition of all parking lots?
We enjoyed and felt and saw the benefit of how Gordian did their assessments because we accompanied the Gordian group when they were doing the Gordian projects. So we saw the value in having detailed analysis of each of the building components. So we implemented that same strategy into the parking lots, driveways, and parent drop-off pickup areas where we deployed staff and we analyzed took pictures and took measurements of every single issue. We spoke to the campus staff, and it's very obvious in some of our driveways, potholes, there's alligator cracking. So we documented that, and we prioritized the projects based on a rubric ourselves, 1, 2, and 3. 1 being the most critical needs driveways, 2 being that there is a concern, but that the driveway is still usable, and 3 are something that we need to implement in about more than 5 years from now. So the projects that are that was presented to the Facility Steering Committee were projects that were ranked at 1, critical needs driveways that have potholes, have just concerns that needs to be addressed.
And not necessarily things that we can just do immediately in-house, is
That's
how
correct.
I'm understanding it. Yeah.
And so are those complete overhauls of the parking lot, where the parking lot will be completely repaved? Or are these itemized as filling the potholes, fixing the cracks? If they're all at a 1, are they all reconditioning the entire parking lot?
They're reconditioning the parking lots. It's not a complete parking lot redo because that's, again, is going to create disturbance with the circulation. That'll only have to be done during the summer months. So it is addressing the critical needs, but addressing them for long-term repair or fix. It's not just patching potholes. It's completely removing certain sections, the most critical areas, because to redo the entire parking lots and driveways would be far more greater than the amount that's being brought forward for consideration. These addresses the critical needs and will create a very nice, useful, functional drive areas and parking lots. It'll be seal-coated areas that are in adequate condition, but to make the campus look wholesome, a complete overall repair, we will you won't know the difference when you arrive to the campus. You will see that the entire parking lot areas of that particular campus that are listed were addressed. You're not going to see patches within your drive lots. That we fix certain areas, and the other areas are still light gray material, while other areas are dark black, new asphalt. It's all going to look repaired, addressed.
And for those campuses, and I think Mr. Byer touched on this a little bit, the campuses that have like potholes that are in serious need, do we have that in our regular M&O budget to do patches and fill those?
We do. We have a budget within the engineering department, and we deploy our subcontractors to go do immediate repairs at our campuses. Just 2 weeks ago, we went and did repairs to one of our middle schools because there were a lot of potholes, and we were concerned that it is a nuisance, and if they're not addressed, they just continue getting worse. So yes, to answer your question, we have a budget within our engineering department, and we fixed those.
Okay, thank you.
Ms. Villarreal, did you have a question?
I just have one. I know that we are supposed to be changing out a couple of chillers at Churchill and where else was it? Reagan. Have we changed out anything other than what is about to be changed out? Have we done any of those, any additionals?
This year, those were the two projects, but in past years, especially after snowpocalypse, before my time, there was some chiller failure you approved, some replacements at Madison and some other campuses. So there has been some replacements over the time when we did not have an active bond program.
Okay.
Mr. Morrison, I was going to ask, what was the total number that the steering committee came up with? Because I know it wasn't probably just at 495.
I don't think we went that far
Okay.
because it was definitely out of reach. It became pretty obvious
Yeah.
that this logically needed to be at least 2 bites out of the apple
Sure.
in order to get things done that were on a list that was 7 years long, basically.
So
I think we captured a lot of the lion's share of the 1 and 2s.
Okay.
And maybe a few 3s.
Okay.
But
And that's
the
what I was
4,
gonna
5,
ask.
6, and 7s.
Yeah.
It's
When-
time we'll have to do this again.
When you're talking about something that's on that like 3 or 4 scale where it's just on the edge, were there some that you all saw that were favorable to just go ahead and do now? Like, I'm just going to, artificial turf, because I know that some of those are in here. Some of those are at the end of their life cycle, but they could get stretched a little bit longer, or did we see that, there's some favorable pricing right now, there's new products that would last longer? Did you make some of those judgment
We tried to stay out of the
calls?
estimation process and just
Okay.
take the numbers that were provided to us because the experts provided them. And if there were any considerations that the rubric would kind of filter some of those things out where a certain project would affect a lot more students.
Sure.
So it would be a lot more beneficial.
Got it.
That might rise to a higher number prioritize wise from the group. So.
Great.
And there was also a process as they were trying to stay within the investment recommendation they agreed upon, that they had to skip over a really expensive project and maybe pick up a smaller one further down the list because it's what they could afford within the budget that was left to them. So there were some tough conversations that the committee members had about what they wanted to fund and who deserved to be funded and what deserved to be funded and what our community expects of us and how to recruit and retain students and staff. But some of those projects were just too big to do all in one bond program.
The one project might eat up half of their budget.
Sure.
That left a lot of things that were serious need undone.
Well, as I heard somebody mention not too long ago, school districts are like cars. As soon as they open, they start depreciating, and we don't bring in revenue we don't have profit that comes in to where we can fix these things. So, anyway, thank you all for your work. Ms. Gigi?
So I just want to say, as the board person on this, it was very impressive. And I personally want to say thank you to Mr. Morrison for your leadership. You came back. You've done this many times, and your expertise was invaluable. Ms. Caldwell and Mr. Corbejo, your leadership, I had no understanding of how you were going to get here. And, it was perfectly orchestrated. And to the people that worked on it, to the committee, the most impressive thing was your collaboration, the horse trading, which students will this impact? What will our community want the most? And it was many late nights, and nobody got up and left. You showed up each time. You worked together. So I personally just want to say thank you. This is long overdue. You can't go 10 years without, in your home, without an air conditioner that's, running on duct tape. And I think you did a great job in prioritizing and working to get our students what they need. So I personally would just want to say thank you to everybody that worked on this. Great job.
Thank you, and you're welcome, and I would work with this group any day.
Look at that. Any other questions? Okay, so, you all have received in your packet the complete list. Please take some more time to go through those. As we have questions, we can reach out to Dr. Micah. He'll get with Ms. Caldwell. Committee, thank you so much for everything y'all did. We appreciate your hard work and your investment.
Labor of love.
Thank you. Is everybody good to move on to the next item? Okay. So we'll go ahead and move on to item C, which is the School Health Advisory Council Annual Report.
Okay, let's see if I can get this going. All right, we good? All right. Good evening, Mr. President, Board of Trustees, Dr. Micah, executive staff, and all the distinguished guests here. I'm going to try and be really brief if possible. So my name is Tony Kamen. I am honored to be the chair of the SHAC committee. I apologize for those of you who don't know. I wear a hat because I have some light sensitivity. Otherwise, I would take my hat off. I have a beautiful, smooth head. I just shaved this morning. But I do wear the visor, the hat, so I can see better. So I apologize about that. So I am here, like I said, to give you an annual report of the SHAC and what we did this past year for the 2024-2025 school year. So the background and the mandate is covered under Senate Bill 1, primarily under Section 28.004. It mandates that there is an establishment of a local school health and advisory council. The SHAC duties are to recommend policies, procedures, curriculum, and strategies for the health education. We provide those recommendations, and then y'all make the decisions. So the annual report requirements is to provide a written report, which you should have already received. The recommendations not previously submitted to the board regarding the health education curriculum and instruction or related recommendations. So what we did is we made suggested changes to previous SHAC recommendations. We also looked at detailed explanations of the SHAC activities since the last report, and then came up with recommendations from the Physical Activity and Fitness Planning Subcommittee, the Fitness and Physical Activity Standing Committee. So for the 24-25 SHAC activities, we were abbreviated this year. We only had 5 meetings, but those 5 meetings were productive, and I think it sets a ground work for this next year for the 25-26 school year. These were the dates that we met. And the first meeting was to elect a chair, vice chair, and a secretary. I was elected as chair. It was a landslide election. No one else really wanted it, so they said, go ahead, keep doing it. But I did have a great vice chair with Anna Ramsey and Bonnie Scott, our secretary, who is also here. Also in that first meeting, we talked about, again, setting up a rhythm for when we were going to establish our meetings so that we knew that every third Wednesday of the month, we were going to meet at the lunchtime. And so we set that up as a schedule. The second meeting was in February. What we did there was we broke into our, first of all, we had a presentation from the Career and Technical Education, the CTE Child Development Lessons from Human Sexuality and Abstinence, HSAE curriculum by Philip Steinhardt, the Senior Director. Based off of that presentation, we had a vote, and it passed 21-0. Afterwards, we met and broke into our 4 standing committees. Those standing committees represent the Classroom Health and Sex Education, or known as CHASE, the Fitness and Physical Activity, the Nutrition Standing Committee, and the Safe and Healthy Schools Standing Committee. So once the individual members of the SHAC broke into those standing committees, and they had an election of the chair, vice chair, and note takers of each of those standing committees. From that, we now have a SHAC executive committee, which consists of the executive, the chair, vice chair, and the secretary of the full SHAC, as well as the chairs of the 4 standing committees. And we, as an executive committee, then plan and look at the schedule and the agenda for the upcoming upcoming meetings. That moves on to our third the third meeting in March. Again, we had updates from each of the 4 standing committees, and it's interesting to note the Fitness and Physical Activity is looking at the progress of the new the new recess implementation, and so it was exciting to hear some of the things that are going on throughout the district. And then the Safe and Healthy Schools talked about the review of the cell phone procedures, which, quite frankly, as a parent, I'm all well. I'm like 100% in on that, because I thought it was kind of crazy when my kids were in middle school, and my kids had a flip phone only when they needed it to let us know that they needed to be picked up. And then we were being told we have teachers that says we need to have a smartphone, and I didn't know who those teachers were, but if we can get away from that and get back to the actual teaching by the teachers, I'm all in for it. Okay. Also in the third meeting, we had a presentation by the Comprehensive School Guidance Program. Rose Garcia came in from Guidance Services and talked about the Quaver Ready system, and it was great. Again, we had a motion that was made to accept it. It was passed 21-0 with 1 abstention, and so after that, we went into our standing committee work. That brings us to the in April 8th, we had a Chase standing committee, did some additional work outside of our normal SHAC meetings. And in that process, we were deliberating on and endorsing the TED Ed resource for health educators. The Screenager documentary, we reviewed that. And then the Kids Teach Kids 21-day snacking challenge initiative. That moves on to our 4th meeting in April. Again, we met and had updates from each of the standing committees. The Chase They were reviewing the endorsed resource and documentary I just mentioned. Again, the fitness and physical activity, they're awaiting the recess updates from the different schools that was submitted on, as well as part of our bylaw revisions. The nutrition, there was nothing done at this time. And then again, safe and healthy schools, we're formulating questions for the middle school staff on the cell phones. At this point, we had each of the standing committees go through the bylaws that you provided us from this last year. And we just found some little critiques here that we're not, we wanted to make sure all the I's were dotted and the T's were crossed. And we did come up with some suggestions, which we'll present at a later date. We also had membership, okay, this is what I was talking about. The membership got together from each of the standing committees, and then the chair of those standing committees brought that to executive. We compiled them, and then we had that for our presentation for the following meeting. Again, the Chase had a work session outside of the SHAC on April 24th. There was a quorum was not met. There were only 3 members. Fortunately, those 3 members were members that were not part of the Chase meeting, and so they went in detail through the review of the Choosing the Best 8th grade curriculum for sexual violence prevention videos, as well as the prior edits. Again, Chase had another meeting on May 12th to focus on the presentation that we were going to then make for the full SHAC for their considerations. The last meeting was in May 21st. Again, we had updates for physical and fitness and physical activity. We had a presentation from Miss Jennifer Cooper, their Nimitz Middle School principal, came and talked about the lunch physical activities and the continued research on the research and resource provisions for the middle schools. The nutrition had a great presentation from the standpoint of they had USDA waiver for Ramadan food distribution. This was requested a SHAC agenda item for Sharon Glosson, the Executive Director of School Nutrition Services. She came in and talked about that. It was a great presentation. And then on the safe and healthy schools, we had a presentation from Ms. Tori Leitsky. I believe that's how you pronounce it. Leitsky, thank you very much. She's there at Bradley Middle School, again, on the cell phone procedures, the planning, implementation, and again, some more community feedback. With that, we had a motion to approve the SHAC bylaw changes to recommend to the Board of Trustees, and that was passed, again, 22-0. We also had a motion to approve the edited instructional materials for the 8th grade HSAE and abuse prevention curriculum for the 2025-2026 school year. The motion was made. The vote went 23 ayes and 0 nays. After that, we adjourned and then went into our work sessions. So, in conclusion, this is our formal presentation. The adoption and implementation of all the revised instructional materials for the 8th grade HSAE abuse prevention curriculum effective 2025-2026 school year, as well as the consideration for the bylaw revisions that we came up with. And again, we'll present that, I think, next at the next meeting with the bylaws. With that, any questions?
Hey, Mr.
How did
K.
I do on time? All right.
Mr. Kamen, thank you for the presentation. SHAC members that are here, thank you all for being here for support.
If you're part of the SHAC, can you please stand up and be recognized?
A lot of hard work and time, just like the facilities steering committee. Our volunteers put in a lot of extra hours, so thank you all for doing that. Looks like I have a handful of questions that are coming up. I don't know who came up first.
I just have a
We'll
comment.
go with Ms. Cox
As
first.
the SHAC trustee liaison, I just wanted to say thank you very much. I've been down at your level, now I'm at the other level, and so I know the heart and the care and concern, and to Ms. Tidgy, the horse trading that goes on in those standing committees, which I'm not a part of, but I leave after that. So I just wanted to say thank you very much. What you do is really important, and it's not just about your campus, it affects the entire district, and I know that you are all there for every single student, and I really appreciate that, and thank you.
Thank you very much. It's a good group to work with.
Ms. Shelton.
So I'll start with thank you, and thank you for your support of D2. You made sure that we had our people in place and
Yes,
let me
ma'am.
know when we didn't have the right folks there. So thanks for helping us have a seat at the table. I appreciate that. Question for you regarding, and you may not be able to answer this, regarding physical fitness. Did they talk to the schools about the impact of the new 2 recess periods? Did they have that conversation, or is that beyond your scope?
It probably is
Okay.
beyond my scope. I believe that they were, like I said, they had been reaching out to certain schools that had already implemented the recess
Okay.
to get some feedback and to see how things were going, but I don't know all the details.
Okay. I'll talk to my people because we got some feedback from some schools.
Great.
So, thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Well, I would say if you got some feedback from the schools, if you can pass that to Dr. Micah, so that we,
Yeah,
if
and
he
the
has
short version is that with the 2 recess periods without more time, they need, if we're going to go out more often, it's cutting into instruction. So they
Sure.
don't,
Yeah.
it's a great problem to have.
Sure.
But it's an opportunity for us to be more efficient, effective.
Ms. Gigi.
So I have a question about the 8th grade curriculum.
Yes, ma'am.
The yellow edits, some of them,
That's the next item, so we'll get to
Yeah,
that
we-
in
I was
just a
gonna
minute.
say, we can get into more detail in the
Yeah,
next. Yes, ma'am.
That'll come up. Any other questions or comments for Mr. Kamen or the rest of the committee?
The only
Ms.
other
Cox?
thing, just the Ramadan program I found really fascinating. I just wondered if you could maybe explain to everyone what that entailed.
I'm
Or
sorry?
Ms. Glosson could. The Ramadan program? Is she right there?
Please.
I just think it's
I'm
important to
going to defer
highlight
to the
that.
expert.
Yes, so this year was the first year that USDA granted a waiver to school districts to be able to provide the school breakfast and lunch to students who were fasting during the school day, during Ramadan, so that they could take those meals home with them and still have access to nutrition. In the past, these students were unable to have school meals because they were not able to consume the meals during the school day, and the school meal program prohibits the food from leaving the campus. And so this was the first year we had the waiver, and we worked with the Welcome Center to get messaging out to our families who were asking for other types of accommodations for Ramadan and translating those messages into appropriate languages. And we were very excited that we had about 40 students that asked for a waiver and an accommodation, and we were able to work with them.
Thank you. I think that's an impressive program and effort.
Any other questions for Mr. Kamen? All right, well, thank you again for your service, and those of you on the committee, we appreciate you all being here. If you hang tight for a minute, we got one item, and then we'll get right back to SHAC, so. All right, item 10, Superintendent Comments. Dr. Micah.
Thank you, Mr. Byer. Just give me 1 second while I pull them up because I got a little busy and didn't print them. Here we go. Over the Memorial Day weekend, we graduated because you all were there with us in the dome, and it was so warm in there. More than 4,300 seniors from our high schools, more than 500 of them earned summa cum laude, meaning they finished high school with a 100-plus GPA. We also graduated nearly 90 adult education students. These are adults in our community who earn their high school equivalency, or GED, or workforce certifications. We also had our latest round of Academy of Creative Education graduates cross the stage during a ceremony last week. More than 150 students who are at risk of graduating took advantage of our nationally recognized program this school year to keep them on task and graduate high school. And we also had an incredible crowd out for our second annual Summer Feast, which was last Thursday at Castle Hills. This is a popular community event where we offer a one-stop shop for our families to get a meal, take home food from the San Antonio Food Bank, visit a mobile immunization clinic, and even work with job opportunities in our district. That is all. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you. All right, item 11, board business. A, possible action regarding School Health Advisory Council recommendations for edited HSAE instructional materials for 8th grade. Mr. Kamen, back to you.
All right, let's see. Sorry. No. Wow. Is that all right? Is that all right if I go ahead and do that presentation this way? I guess
Yeah.
I can't find the.
That's fine.
All right. Again, good evening, Mr. President, Board, Directors, Dr. Micah, Executive Staff, and everyone who's left to stay. We appreciate you sticking around. All right. So, again, the background for the Chase Committee and the recommendation from the full SHAC was to follow the May 8th, 2023 adoption of Choosing the Best curriculum for the Human Sexuality and Abstinence Education, HSAE, and Abuse Violence Prevention. The School Health Advisory Committee, the SHAC, recommended that the Board of Trustees approve that all the instructional materials, edits, and reviewed by the SHAC be presented to the Board for approval and prior to implementation. Subsequently, all 8th grade HSAE and abuse prevention curriculum materials, including the NEISD teacher leader guides, the teacher tools, videos, and the student note-taking guides, were thoroughly reviewed by the Classroom Health and Sex Ed, or CHASE, Standing Committee. At this time, I'm going to bring up the CHASE Chair, Christy Burgett, and she's going to do the presentation.
Thank you. Hi, I'm Christy Burgette, and I am the chair of this committee for this school year. Okay. I don't know how to use this. Tony, help me.
That's right. Yeah, you want to do this one? Okay, better. Thank you.
It's a touch screen. It's a touch screen, or you can use this down here.
Very dangerous.
Yeah, just don't drop it. Or you can use the arrows.
Okay, I like arrows.
Okay, there you go.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so a little bit of background, because I know we have a lot of new board members. So Choosing the Best curriculum materials were approved for instruction back in May of 2023, and that did go through the SHAC and then through the board, and so then that material was approved back in May 2023. And then the Chase got together and we reviewed all of that. So that approval was contingent on the Chase and SHAC's edits. And so then we did do the edits. Chase concluded all the 8th grade edits back in 2024. And so then we did have a presentation to the full SHAC June 5th, 2024. At that point, a motion was made to use 7th grade curriculum for 8th grade for the 24-25 school year, and then that motion did carry. This year, on May 21st, like Tony mentioned earlier, the Chase presented to the full SHAC once again. This time we did make the motion to recommend to the Board of Trustees implementation of the 8th grade HSAE edits. So the information that you all received and I know we have a question about the highlights. So it's the student note-taking guides, the NEISD teacher leader guides, and the digital teacher tools. So the information that you all received, there were highlights. The yellow highlights are suggested additions. The yellow highlight with the strike-through is a deletion. And then the green highlight is an addition to meet the TEKS. So did you want me to answer it? Did you have a question? Eli?
Well, some of the yellow was just a word or two, so I'm assuming those words or two came from you all. Some of them were paragraphs. Did you all write that? Did you get it from something that was struck before? Where did that yellow come from?
It came from us. It came from
You
the
all wrote
Chase,
that?
yes.
Okay, thank you.
From the Chase committee members. Okay.
To that, but I'm sorry, to that point, so am I to understand that, let's say you change the word from or to and, then we'll be able to go, assuming it gets approved, before we purchase it, they would change it from or to and for us, or how would that work?
Well, we've already purchased, NEISD has already purchased the curriculum.
Okay.
And we have, fortunately, and the reason why we chose choosing the best was we had the best options to actually go and make the modifications to fit the NEISD and the community.
Understood. Okay, thank you.
Okay. So then back to the process of how we got to where we are today. The process of the edits was led by the Chase Committee. Chase met 19 times during the 23-24 school year, and that's where we reviewed and finalized the edits for the 8th grade materials. We met, those 19 times were usually over 2 hours, maybe close to 3 sometimes. We discussed a lot, as you can see through the edits. Some words were just changed, lots of details. During the 24-25 school year, so this school year, we did have some new Chase standing committee members, and they were able to review all the edits that the previous Chase had completed the prior year. The recommended edits include videos, the teacher tools, the teacher script, and the student activity modifications. So the way we went about the edits, as you'll see on the right-hand side there, so we did factor in community feedback and concerns, and that was feedback that was brought in years prior before the actual curriculum was purchased, right? So when we were discussing which curriculum to purchase, or when the district was, there were feedback events. So it was several years ago that those feedback events were taking place. We definitely took into account the TEKS, and then we did try initially. We were very good about, in the beginning, it was a lot easier to reach a consensus, but we did reach a point where consensus could not be met in last year's Chase Committee. So then we did do majority vote after we realized that consensus was just we weren't gonna get there. Let's see. So some of the things that are in this 8th grade HSAE it's just a continuation of changes that were made to 7th grade and even the high school curriculums. The big understanding and key message we just brought that in from 7th grade, 6th grade, 7th grade, and high school curriculum. The video statement is before every video, same thing. Those were just a continuation of things that were already approved for prior or for other grade levels. The teacher notes and the training and the teacher training. So our recommendation is we did approve all edited instructional material. We are asking you all to approve all the edited instructional materials for 8th grade HSAE and abuse prevention for implementation in the 25-26 school year. The Chase voted to approve this. On May 12th, we did an electronic vote, and then we did take that to the SHAC on May 21st, and it was voted unanimously to recommend this 8th grade CTB Life curriculum as edited. And that's it. Any questions?
So everybody got this in our packets, and I assume everybody had a chance to review it. So we'll go down the line. We'll start. Who's first? Ms. Landry?
Okay.
So first, I do want to say thank you for the time and attention that you put into this. I know that 19 meetings, at least 2 hours, and I know some of them were very difficult, and I do appreciate that. Although I do want to say that I'm a little disappointed that the curriculum was brought back as is from last year. When it was presented to the SHAC last year, the whole SHAC, it was voted against because the feel from the majority of the group was that the curriculum was at a higher level than 8th grade. And so
I don't think that that's an accurate statement. So we didn't get to vote on the 8th grade curriculum that we presented to, or that you guys received. The SHAC last year voted, the motion was immediately made to substitute it for 7th grade. So we
right,
didn't
and the
get to vote on
discussion in the
8th
room
grade.
was because those individuals felt that the curriculum was above the TEKS that are required for 8th grade, and that there's some content that exceeds the TEKS and goes into more mature curriculum, more mature context, which I understand from conversations in that room that day, that there was a lot of contention on that. And of course, new SHAC, new members, smaller group, less participation, and the same curriculum. So I am disappointed
It is
that,
the curriculum that the last year's Chase as a whole approved. So
right.
it is with the voices, some of those voices that you're referring to.
Right.
Yeah.
But the larger SHAC as a whole voted to use the 7th grade
Correct, yes.
versus the 8th grade version.
Yeah, and the reason why that's the way it went was because the presenter did not present the full 8th grade curriculum. And motion was made to before he could actually make that recommendation, and a recommendation was made from the floor to approve the 7th grade curriculum, which is what we did prior to in the fall.
Right.
Because it gave us an additional amount of time to come back and then review the 8th grade curriculum.
Right, and the 8th grade curriculum was presented to the entire SHAC, was provided to them
No,
via
it
email.
wasn't completed.
Last year,
it-
when it was, when
There
the,
was a presentation that was made
So
about
I
the
don't.
8th grade curriculum,
I
but it
apologize for cutting you off,
complete.
Mr. Kamen. The recommendation right now is what we have in front of us.
Correct.
I don't necessarily, I prefer not to rehash what happened last year.
Sure.
well, in my point
And so the
in
recommendation
bringing-
is for this 8th grade curriculum.
And my point in
And if you have
bringing
some
this
edits
up
that you would like to make, let's hear those
is
now.
the community feedback last year in the SHAC that was the larger group was concerns over the more adult content in the curriculum. And the content hasn't changed, just the people who were voting has.
Do you have some
Well,
specific recommendations you'd like?
Absolutely, I do.
Okay. well,
Absolutely.
Now's the chance for us to go through those.
So for example, on page 45, which is 45 in, I think it's 45 in the document that we received, but 47 on the slides, so there's like a 2-page difference, so there's 2 page numbers. That page introduces the concept of anal sex. Page 45.
45,
Yes.
delaying sex and ideally until marriage. This is 45.
And just to be fair, that part was not discussed, like that was not the issue at last year's full SHAC meeting. So the main issue was the video.
So one of the issues was the
It's right
video.
here, Marcia. It's down here at the bottom.
What page is that? It's right there.
Thank you. So it says, At-risk sexual behaviors include oral, vaginal, and anal sex and skin-to-skin sexual contact. Add these to your note-taking guide. So this is a concept that is very specific and is suggesting types of sexual intimacy to a youth that's probably not there, that probably has no idea what that means. And so in 8th grade, these children don't need to be introduced to those ideas.
Okay.
The CDC has a study done in 2017 that says less than 15% of students beginning at age 15 have sexual contact. These students in 8th grade are 13, 14 years old. And the CDC says that 15% or fewer students at age 15 are having sex, much less thinking about anal sex and oral sex. These are concepts that many in our community feel shouldn't be introduced to children at that age, and that it's unnecessary to introduce those concepts to them. And I personally have been confronted by many parents who have actually pulled their kids out of our district because of this, because of these contexts. And this isn't a quality product to provide to our families. And I understand that parents have to opt in. I get that. But when you have a student who you choose not to opt in, but their best friend gets opted in, they're going to be talking about those things because those things are new to them. They're random ideas. It doesn't go into detail. But these are things that our 8th graders don't need to learn about yet.
Okay, and this is something that we did discuss, obviously, when we did the 6th grade curriculum and then eventually did the 7th grade curriculum. And during the process, of course, we did the high school first and then came back and did 6th grade and then did 7th grade afterwards. There's the term scaffolding. And so you have to build upon what the concepts was originally provided at the 6th grade level, and we scaffold up to the 7th grade level. And then between the 7th grade and high school, there was a gap. And so we had to scaffold up to that, because in the 8th grade, students can take the high school equivalent HSAE curriculum for high school credit. So to think that an 8th grader is not capable of understanding, all of those things are modes of transmission. It's not, they're not promoting anal sex. They're not promoting oral sex. It's based off of what the TEKS state. And the TEKS state, you have to be able to understand and list these modes of transmission. And so all of those are part of the modes of transmission.
Which TEK states that you have to be able to list
I don't have
all of the modes of transmission? I didn't
I
see
don't
that
have
in
it
the
in front of me.
TEKs. Okay.
But
All
we
right.
did this, everything that we did was based off of what the TEKS state and what the state of Texas requires for health education.
And
This
I
was
would
not-
argue that was a step beyond the TEKs.
No, I think there were people that some people thought that, but not the broad scope of the community. It was a couple of individual people that voiced that concern.
Can I?
Yeah, Ms. Gigi.
So I'd like to address that as much as I would not like to address that.
Oh, yeah.
I do think some middle school principals would say that they have kids having sex. This is not promoting it when you read it. I think it does a very good job of talking about abstinence constantly throughout it and talking about go home and talk to your parents about this, this, and this. They're not 15. You're saying that that's when this behavior begins. I'm going to say it does begin sooner, but I don't think we can wait until their 15th birthday to have that conversation. And again, I don't like having this conversation in public like this, but there is a sentiment amongst our kids, our uninformed kids, that they can't get STDs through oral and anal sex, and they can't get pregnant from oral and anal sex. And so
So you're saying our 13 and 14-year-old students think that they cannot get STDs or diseases from, and they're,
Through those-
and they're fully aware of how those transmissions work.
I don't think they are. I think that's why they need this. I think it's critical that they have it before
And
they.
I agree that in high school, it's more important for us for them to understand. But I'm sorry, there's another section where it talks about how Christy admires Tom's strong arms and chest. And 8th graders don't have strong arms and chests. They're
I don't
not
know. I've
the-
seen some 8th graders that have a full beard, and I can't even grow a full beard, and I'm 56 years old.
And the little girls are thinking, my boyfriend's cute, and my friends think he's cute, and that's why I have a boyfriend like this. This is still a very tender age in the development of most of these kids. And we always talk about not teaching down or not setting expectations based on a small minority. Less than 15% of these students, statistically, based on the CDC data, are having sex before 15. And so we're developing this curriculum that's got all this information that these students don't need at that age. Maybe later, maybe a little bit later. I don't like it, but maybe they do need it. But I don't think 8th graders should be exposed to these ideas, these suggestions, and they are suggestions.
But Marcia,
I don't
isn't
think the
that-
curriculum is suggesting it. I think it's doing
When-
quite the opposite.
When you introduce a new concept, a new idea,
Miss Landry, I would love to say those
kiddos.
kiddos don't know about this. They do.
And isn't
They-
that
they
description
do.
The
referring
teak is right here.
to trying to understand the difference between infatuation and love? Isn't that what that example was referring to?
Okay, so if she said she thinks he's really cute and likes how her friends react to her, would that not be any different? Then
I don't know. I'm not the subject expert here, so
I'm
I
saying
don't get paid to write curriculums.
that
I'm not sure.
we're
but-
sexualizing
But I think
the
they're trying to, that's
material.
the difference between, I don't know that they're sexualizing, but I think that was an example of trying to get kids to understand you think you're in love, but it might just be
Right,
infatuation.
and on the boys' side, it says that he enjoys her company and enjoys being around her. And still, it's all infatuation, but when Christy admires him, it's his strong arms and chest. And saying Christy thinks he's really cute and likes how her friends react is the same thing as infatuation, just putting less emphasis on the sexual aspect of this age group.
With regards to the teak, it does state for 7th and 8th grade, describe the various modes of transmission of STDs and STIs. If you'd like.
And so, and still that's vague and generalized. And again,
No, you have to describe them. They're not saying go out and demonstrate them. They're saying describe them. Big
yeah,
difference.
and I see that a little bit differently for this age group. And I'm telling you that our community does too. And
I do believe that there are a lot of people in the community that feel a way, and then there's a lot of people in the community feel the other way, right? We're going to receive a lot of, I think, and we appreciate a lot of feedback from both sides. But this was voted on in the Chase Committee, and it passed, with your representation there. That's the way it passed. There were a lot of concessions made on both sides. So this was the route that we went. And then there was, so to discuss how the vote went last year. Oh, actually, never mind. We weren't going to do that.
Well, and just to add to that is the concessions that Christy's talking about is in the conversation of the reviewing process. There were concessions made both ways. And so we changed wording here or there to soften it. And at this age level, we felt that we could take what the curriculum was actually written by curriculum writers, because I'm a civil engineer, not a curriculum writer. But I understand, I'm educated enough to understand, okay, this is what the TEKS state. We're staying within the TEKS. And we're gradually scaffolding from one age level to the next that is age appropriate.
I'm going to have to ask you a question. Okay,
ma'am.
I'm trying to figure out how you think that this is scaffolding, because anal and oral sex, when I was an 8th grader, they would never have thought about bringing that up in a class.
They're doing it, but I think
At
that's the
school,
problem.
it's happening.
Because they're doing it.
Well,
At middle
When-
schools.
ma'am,
there's got to be a way.
Mr.
I mean,
L'Oreal,
I'm
at
sorry.
what-
This is
Okay.
At what point were you an 8th grader? What year?
Well, we don't
I
have
don't-
to get into that.
I mean, I'm not gonna
necessarily.
get into
And
that.
I'm just
I
saying,
understand.
it was a while back, and
So-
so times have changed. And the issue still is, we're leading with abstinence.
Yeah, but we don't need to be, we don't need to be introducing anal and oral sex to little kids.
We're not introducing it.
I mean, that's what we're doing. If we put this in a book, in other words, if a kid really has never even heard about it, now all of a sudden they're going to start saying, oh, what is that? Now they're curious. Now we're going to start getting into areas that we don't want to get into. Why do we have to introduce anal and oral sex to 8th graders?
So can I offer that this is opt-in?
Yes, ma'am.
And to Ms. Landry's point, she can choose not to opt her children in. I would probably choose to opt my children in. Our kids are friends, so they probably are talking about it. And I understand that that's your concern. My bigger concern, though, is, let's say we don't have it. And I, because who was a parent, talked about the cell phones and they had to have smartphones. I got suckered into the smartphone thing too, right, as a parent, because my kids said the teacher, they needed it. So we have smartphones. Well, now they're on TikTok, and they're on Instagram, and they're on Facebook. And they are learning things, and they are discovering things that we have no idea about, because they're doing it in the quiet of their room. They're doing it on the break because someone's big brother or big sister introduced that concept. And because I'm a teetotaler, and we don't talk about that at home, right? So now my kid is ignorant. And the only thing he or she knows is what they have gotten off of the internet. And so now
I
I've got-
promise you, on at least one of those two topics, if they're aware of it and they're talking about it, number one, there are all kinds of preventatives to ensure that your kids aren't looking at things like that.
But not
And-
everyone's
no,
doing that. And I will tell you,
but less
Marcia,
than-
as a mom, when my boys came home and when I overheard a conversation between my 3 children and found out that they knew where the porn website was, and we talk about sex in our home, right? I think we do a disservice to the greater good if we don't educate our kids. Because I would say that I'm pretty forward thinking, but we missed the boat
we're doing a
on things.
disservice to the greater good by presenting these concepts to them.
But it's
And
how do you protect yourself? And I
Well,
think
and it is, how do you protect yourself?
Because I have an issue with scratching out 21C, defining dating violence and the characteristics of unhealthy.
But it's lower, it's further down. It's further down. They just moved it down.
Oh, okay,
It's still
praise.
there.
Is that correct? You moved it.
Yes, that's
Okay,
correct.
right? Because I just think and I know we probably won't solve for this today, but I take exception to the fact that we're introducing something that they have not already seen. If your kid has a big sister, they've heard it, or brother, they've seen it, they heard it. If they go to the neighbor's house and the parents aren't regulating what they do on the TV, they've seen it, they've heard it. And our job is to help educate first and protect these young minds, right? So that they don't get into a situation where someone feeds them something.
Young minds.
So when the little boy says, "Oh, if we just do it the way," it's not even really sex. It's not even really sex.
Well,
It's just, we're just, friends at play. And she doesn't know any better because her mom opted out, or we decided not to have the conversation. And so now we have a young girl who's engaged in something that could potentially be harmful for her or to her. Or we have a young man who on a dare, spin the bottle or whatever they do nowadays at parties, has introduced something because he did it on a dare. And so now these kids are at risk.
Those kids aren't doing those things.
But if we talk to 500 of our teachers, they in 6th, 7th, and 8th grade, they would tell you that they are. They would tell you, our teachers would tell you that they are, because I've asked the question, because I thought everyone was like me, and your mom said don't do it, you don't do it. But if you ask our teachers, they're telling you, they're saying that they're doing it. Kids are getting caught in the bathroom, in the stairway. Our job is to educate them.
And
our job is to
protect
help
them.
keep them safe. This is protecting them because now Sally Sue knows. A concept that her mother, who is nervous about talking about that, or father, can't talk about that because they never fathomed that, because it's not a part of their vernacular. It's our job, because we know better, to do better and to help our children be and stay both educated and safe. And I'm going to be quiet because I see.
And Ms. Landry, I'd like to add, I appreciate what you said. So I have 4 children, 2 boys, 2 girls. My youngest was taking the health class last year. I preempted that because, like you said, I feel like my wife and I have protected our daughters, or our kids, period, and their innocence. But at some point, I had a conversation because I'm part of the Chase Committee. And I wanted to know, and I asked my now adult children back when they were going through the Johnson cluster, at what age did you hear this term? At what age did you hear this term? And so this is real world situation here. And so I totally agree. And I would love to protect every one of them, every kid. But there are going to be some parents or some guardians that don't have that conversation with their child because they want to keep them innocent, and all of a sudden their child's going to get exposed to that by someone else. So why wouldn't you try to protect them by teaching what the curriculum actually teaches, but in a way that it meets the society as the NEISD. That's the great thing about us being able to edit the not only the words, but even some of the videos, to take out the stuff that we went, oh no, that's going too far. But this is a protection of not only pregnancy, but it's of the STDs. And they have to understand that if they engage in any type of sexual activity, they run a risk.
Then why don't you just say that?
Skin contact
That's plenty. You don't need to just throw that in their face right there.
But
Why do you have to be, to an 8th grader, why do you have to say those 2 words?
So
Wouldn't you rather it be thrown in their face in a controlled?
If you're
Wouldn't you
talking
rather-
about,
everybody hang on 1 second, please. We need to go one at a time so people can hear us.
Sure.
Before we get into that, Ms. Landry, do you have any other specific questions you'd like to get into? I don't think we're going to get anywhere with this conversation.
And so my final point is, based on that and based on the feedback from families and the individuals I know who have taken their kids out of our district because they've, even to the degree that we've been able to modify the curriculum, I, in good conscience, cannot vote for this curriculum.
Okay. Ms. Cox, did you have some questions or edits or comments?
Just some comments. I would much rather my child learn about those words in a controlled classroom environment where I trust the teacher. I know that the teacher, it's evidence-based. We didn't have the internet when we were growing up. I mean, thank God. I wish we didn't have it now, honestly. I really wish we didn't have it now. I know what cell phones do to kids. I know what the exposure it brings to them, whether they want it or not. So I feel so much more comfortable. I've read through this entire program. I love the videos. There's the kids, those videos show that the kids can make the choice, that they can be empowered, that it's up to them, that they don't have to do what everyone's doing. They can take a moment back and decide what's right for them. So I really like that part of it. I like the fact that there's an interview portion that goes home with the parents. I love that idea. Instead of mom saying, well, what do you think? Kids flip it over, right? And they say, hey, mom, how did you get around, how did you handle that when you were growing up? I love that part of it because it makes it interactive and it takes an uncomfortable moment sometimes in a household and it puts the kid in charge. It empowers the kid in that situation instead of having the parent talk at the kid. So I really like that part of it. I love the fact that the media pressure part is a really big part of this as well because that's kind of changed over the years. It wasn't, it started when my daughter started taking this class 10 years ago, but I love that that's really prevalent in this as well. I know those words are buzzwords. I know they're hard to say and I know they're hard to hear, but I'd much rather my kid hear it in a safe environment with a classroom teacher that they respect and that knows what they're doing than somewhere else because they're going to hear it somewhere else. So I applaud this program and I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Cox. Ms. Thompson, Ms. Chigi, have any questions, comments?
Well, I too like that abstinence is written everywhere. But I also don't think you can talk about STDs. You can't just talk about the different kinds. Our kids are inquisitive. They're going to ask about, well, how do you get that? And so I don't know how you skirt it without going there. I think we have to be preventative, and I think for the families that are uncomfortable with this, I think we have a great system where you've got to opt in. You've got to have the permission slip. And so I appreciate your work and the committee's work, and I think it's a good curriculum.
Any other questions?
Can I add something real quick?
Yes.
Do I have that right? I don't know. But I did want to mention that the opt-in rate is very high for this curriculum, and it has been for the last few years. So it's in the high 90s of the opt-in rate. So that might be something to consider. But
Speaking of opt-in, do you specifically tell the parents on that form that this will be discussed, this topic will be discussed?
they have access to.
There's a preview.
No, I'm
of it.
asking you a specific question.
Do I
When
tell
we
them?
do when we have that form, is it specifically, does it say we will
No.
be discussing anal and oral sex in this class?
No, it tells them where they can access everything that we said.
I think it should just lay it out there. If you're willing to tell 8th grade kids about this, I think their parents need to know about it.
They can, though, yes.
Well, no, I mean, I'm talking about on that permission slip, they need to
No.
know what's going on in that class
Okay, thank
and be
you.
fully informed, because that's not informed. And they need to know that there are certain topics that may make people like me very upset if I found out that my kid had been exposed to that.
All parents have 100% access to the curriculum.
But,
So-
how many parents are actually going to be able to sit down and read
A lot
that?
So
of
it's
them.
parental
Ma-
choice. They have a choice
Okay.
and they have the right
Ms.
to go
Shelton, do
look
you
at
have a
it.
question?
I just want to make sure, I love that it's opt-in because it is very sensitive, right? And Ms. Landry and I we want the exact same thing, we just see a different way of getting there, right? So I love that it's opt-in. I want to make sure, and it's the law, but I also want to make sure that if my kids opt in and Ms. Landry kids don't opt in, that we have the mechanisms in place so that her children don't feel othered because they're not
taking the class, right? That's really important. So we continue to have a sense of we're still one community, we're just getting to the solution differently.
If Katie were here, because she has explained it to us.
Can you use a microphone, please?
There are valuable and important lessons and materials that are given to the children whose parents don't opt them in.
Okay.
It's not, there's no shame. It
Okay.
is, and it's not a waste of their time either. It's still
Okay.
valuable information and curriculum for them.
Thank you.
I have a technical question that if this is approved tonight, do we still have time to print all the material, or not print the materials, get out the notifications, have all the previews ready by the first day of school?
Yes, sir.
Good.
There's enough time.
Okay, thank you.
Can that permission slip, the only way I would vote for this program, the only way, is if there could be something in there that allows the parents to know exactly what will be presented in this class. And I'm talking just a simple statement. We will be discussing anal and oral sex as a transmission and something like that, so they know exactly what their child is going into. Informed consent. And that is the only way, because I was looking at it, that's, I have to agree with Miss Landry. The rest of the stuff is good. I like it. But when that was just like hitting a brick wall on that. So is there a way that we can do that?
My fear is that we'd have to start getting into, it'd be a laundry list of things that we'd have to put in there, because we could highlight those two things and then somebody would come back and say, well, I didn't know about this. So I think the best we can do is say, you have to opt your child in. Here is the place you can go and read every single line of this text, look at every single video of this curriculum, and you make your decision for your family. That's what this is all about. So
Or
with
maybe
that,
even adding a line, David, there may be sensitive issues. It could be more general. There may be sensitive issues discussed.
What's on the opt-in form? Can we see, do we know what's on the form now?
And then,
I certainly don't have a copy of that, and I usually don't get into the weeds of that. I think Katie probably does have the opt-in form, but I know it does have websites and places to go to look at things. I just don't know exactly what it says.
I think there needs to be some kind of I like that about there could be sensitive topics that you may not agree with, and please go to this to look at this curriculum. That needs to be on there. Something that it says, it's like forewarning that this could be a problem, because we don't want a bunch of angry parents. First of all, we do have a bunch of angry parents that have removed their kids from our schools because of this. And frankly, I don't want to lose any more kids. Right. And I don't want to be accused of doing something that's not in good taste to other people's children because, we refuse to say, look, you need to go do this. You need to look at it if you have any questions or hesitation on this.
Sure. We totally agree. Parents need to be informed, and they have access to it.
they have 100% access to everything.
But we need to say it on there somewhere.
All right. Do I have a motion to approve the 8th grade curriculum as recommended by the SHAC?
So moved.
Thank you, Mrs. Gigi. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mrs. Cox. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say nay.
Nay.
Motion passes 5-2. Thank you all very much for your time and your efforts. Item 12, new business for possible board action. A, business services. 1, possible action regarding consideration and approval of an order authorizing the issuance of Northeast Independent School District unlimited tax refunding bond series 2025. Mr. Villarreal.
Yes, Mr. President. We bring to you tonight an order to see about approving and authorizing the issuance of refunding bonds. Michelle Aragon with Hilltop Securities is here, and Matt Lee with Norton Fulbright, Norton Rose Fulbright, and it's just an order for us to go to market in August. And this is the resolution giving us access or the approval to.
Everybody was provided a copy of the resolution in your packet. Do I have anybody that has any questions or comments related to it? All right, seeing none, do I have a motion to adopt an order authorizing the Northeast Independent School District Unlimited Tax Refunding Bond Series 2025 pursuant to a delegated sale as presented?
So moved.
Thank you, Mrs. Landry. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Ms. Shelton. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say nay. Motion passes 7-0. Item B, consent. 1, Northeast Educational Foundation. A, Northeast Educational Foundation MOU with NEISD. 2, Business Services. A, bid items. B, over 50,000 purchases. C, 2025-2026 anticipated over 50,000 purchases. D, 2025-2026 proposed cooperative purchasing contracts. 3 minutes from May 2025 for end of consent. Do I have any trustees wishing to pull something for discussion? All right, seeing none, do I have a motion to approve a consent as provided?
So moved.
Thank you, Mrs. Villarreal. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mrs. Chichi. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say nay. Motion passes 7-0. Item 13, reports. A, interim financial and management reports. B, awarded bid report. C, federal grants report. D, donations report. E, open records request report. Did anybody have any questions about those? I know there was one last month, I think.
I do have a question on the donations report.
Okay, item D, donations report.
Item D, yes. Let me see. On July 31st of 2024, we received from Ms. Chancellor in the news, I love those, thank you for sending those, that Tony Gonzalez, Congressman Tony Gonzalez was donating $5 million to the district. And I noticed that it wasn't, I expected to see it on the donations report.
We never received that.
Oh, interesting, okay.
That was a grant or a piece through his congressional district. So that was unfortunately due to Congress not passing a budget, but doing a continuing resolution. That is, we never received it. That $5 million. Okay. I will say that we're working on a new request with him.
Okay,
Okay.
thank you.
Any other questions about those documents? All right. Item 14, discussion and possible action regarding board members' requests for items to be placed on a future agenda and/or requests for reports from the administration. Do I have anybody wishing to add something? I will say preemptively, the SHAC bylaws that were mentioned will be coming to us in the very near future. Just tonight, we thought was going to be a little bit lengthy, so.
Can I ask a question about that?
Yes.
So is that going to be a reoccurring annual process? Since we just,
I didn't anticipate that happening this quickly, but I know, I hope it's not a recurring thing, but since they went through the process, we do need to at least review what they sent to us. I would not like to make that a habit, but it sounds like since we did change some things, my understanding is that there was some maybe practical things that they had recommendations for us about. I have not seen those. I don't know what those look like, but we'll get it to everybody ahead of time when that
and
comes.
they provided if I remember correctly, we had recommendations the prior year also.
We did.
Okay.
We did. So
Okay.
I'm not sure, and we can get this on an agenda so we can actually discuss it, but that will be coming to us. More than likely the August meeting, but we'll see if we can get it in before then. So anyway, just wanted to say that before anybody brings that up. Anybody else have any questions or something?
I have
Ms.
three
Shelton?
things. One, I did not see, and maybe we're done with it, but our update on our campus consolidation and what we're doing month or week to week.
Yep. That's my apologies. I missed that. But we will send you one.
Okay.
Or we can add it to next Tuesdays.
Maybe we'll look at
Piece.
the agenda and see if we can add an actual update if you
Okay.
have that available.
Dr.
report
Micah,
is
we all
great.
missed it. We missed it too. It wasn't just you.
Okay.
Sad is, we all met, and then
Wow.
somehow we didn't add it.
And you know that's my favorite report.
I know, and that is, unfortunately, apparently, we all made a mistake. So I will work with Mr. Byer to bring, because I would like for you all to all hear it, okay?
And then with that report, it might be easy, Mr. Byer asked a couple Mondays ago about an update on our savings with the consolidation. And I know Ms. Lackhorn, when I made the ask, she said it's within the number. So I would love to see what that looks like broken out, because we promised our constituents savings, so would love to know what that is. And then the last thing is last Monday, I think, the young lady came about juvenile justice, and I know they're going to meet with you, Mr. Jarrett or Mr. Jimenez. Would love to know what the update is and the timing of, I don't know if it goes back to us or if it'll just be for the fall or whatever.
Yeah, they met yesterday,
Look, timing is everything.
and we are reviewing legalities of what that component is to see if it needs to go through the SHAC committee or not.
Okay,
That is what, there's your update.
there you go. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Anything else? All right, I move this a little later, not knowing what the rest of the agenda is going to be like. Number 15, President's Comments, just a couple of quick things. One, we have TASB Summer Leadership this week, so those of you going, you received a packet from Peggy just outlining the programs, so take a look at that. At the end of May 28th, she sent us the June, July events. So if you haven't looked at that, please go through that and let her know what you're going to be at. That's one. We will have some upcoming July meetings that I know that I've tentatively emailed everybody about. Peggy's going to send out a little Google form. These are to help approve staff and any appointments that Dr. Micah needs. So we'll have 3 dates through the first few weeks of July. So you'll get to weigh in on what days work best for you. The 2025-2026 board member or regular and special meeting calendar was provided to us last week, so please take a look at that. And lastly, to piggyback on Dr. Micah with graduations, I want to thank everybody that helped put all those together and helped get those kids across the stage, because it was, again, from our perspective, at least my perspective, it was very well run. No major problems except for some kids that wanted a little TikTok challenge and pretend to trip across the stage. And if you weren't pretending, I apologize, but it certainly appeared that way for the few I saw. But anyway, thank you to everybody that made the graduations happen, from the counselors and the administration all the way to Dr. Oxley and Mr. Shoesmith for all their help as well. So anyway, that's all I had with that. And item number 16, adjournment, and the time is 9:48 p.m.